Chapter 520. Clearly, this Lu Xianlu's tone was implying something. Qin Wushuang looked at Lu Xianlu with astonishment. Apparently, he also realized that this Lu Xianlu had become aware of their identity. Lu Xianlu shot a glance outside and said loudly, "Take your things and leave quickly." As he spoke, he pushed Qin Wushuang lightly and sent his voice, "Hurry up if you want to leave." Most likely, that Luo Tongtian has already arrived at the Dansha prefecture. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was shocked as he looked at Lu Xianlu with surprise. Lu Xianlu revealed a strange smile. "Young man, I believe in you. If someone can overthrow the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, I believe that person must be you." While this Lu Xianlu sent his voice, he pushed Qin Wushuang outside. "Luo Tongtian and I share an irreconcilable hatred. This time, since he has come, he must find me to settle it. Here, the compass I gave you has a small interlayer. There's a map inside. Remember, remember." When he said here, Lu Xianlu pushed Qin Wushuang and his friends out fiercely and swore, "Without the money to pay, why would you craft the spiritual talisman? Get lost." Qin Wushuang and his friends walked out with the momentum. That young man waving the paper fan looked at Qin Wushuang with a cold sneer and appeared to be examining him. Qin Wushuang glanced at that person and gave a cold sneer. He was too lazy to pay attention to him. "Kid, since you have gone in, do you still want to leave with ease?" That young man said coldly. "Stop." Qin Wushuang ignored him and continued to walk forward. If this young man took another step forward, he absolutely wouldn't mind killing him directly and killing all of them. Although they were some underlings, regardless, they were people of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. To Qin Wushuang, as long as they were people of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, they would be his sworn enemy. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want to cause more trouble for the time being, he probably would have immediately killed him. Seeing that Qin Wushuang was ignoring him, the young man's face changed slightly, and he nodded his head lightly. The group of black-clothed warriors immediately surrounded Qin Wushuang and the others. Instantly, the atmosphere became tense and hostile. Qin Wushuang looked at the young man coldly and said indifferently, "Are you deliberately looking for trouble? If you don't want to die, then scram. Get lost." GMO also roared. The name of that young man was Luo Yi. He was also one of the more exceptional figures among the younger generation of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. This time, after Luo Ting's death, it was an opportunity for him. He intended to demonstrate his talent before the seniors of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. That was why he took the initiative to do this. Obviously, Luo Yi wanted to get things done. Therefore, he could not help but appear to be eager for quick success. When Luo Yi saw Qin Wushuang's calm and collected appearance, he had some doubts in his heart. This Luo Yi was different than Luo Ting. He was much more composed and would not be overly arrogant like Luo Ting. It was because sometimes arrogance would lead to hot-headedness. On the other hand, Luo Yi appeared to be calm. Among this calmness, there were some treacherous intentions. He would not dare to make a move against that Lu Xianlu directly. However, he did not fear the others, especially when Qin Wushuang and the others had just entered Lu Xianlu's shop. Who knew whether or not Lu Xianlu had let them take away the special goods? Due to this consideration, of course Luo Yi would not let Qin Wushuang and the others leave easily. "What's going on?" Lu Xianlu walked out with a gloomy face. When Luo Yi saw Lu Xianlu coming out, he could not help but feel somewhat nervous. He said to Lu Xianlu, "Lu, for now, this matter has nothing to do with you. For your side, of course our head Dao warrior will reason with you. Mind your own business." Lu Xianlu said with a cold sneer, "You think I want to get involved in your business? If you want to fight or kill, scram. Don't dirty my turf." Lu Xianlu was not polite at all. He walked in front of Luo Yi and sized him up with cold eyes. "What? Do you want me to personally send you away?" A complicated look flashed in Luo Yi's eyes. In front of Lu Xianlu, although Luo Yi dared to be arrogant, when it came to fighting, even 10 Luo Yis would not be enough to defeat Lu Xianlu. "Lu, your turf is going to be a bloodbath soon. Today, I'm going to do a preview in advance so that you can be mentally prepared. Lu Xianluo's face darkened, and his shoulders seemed to move slightly. Luo, he only felt that his whole body was light. The next moment, his whole body flew out and fell directly into a small ditch a few feet away. He flopped in a very embarrassing manner. Luo, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He jumped ashore, pointed at Lu Xianlu, and shouted, "Lu, are you refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? Just you wait. Tomorrow our head Dao warrior will come to reason with you." Lu Xianlu sneered, "I'll give you one more breath to think about it. If you don't get out of here, Luo Tongtian will send people to drag your bodies back." Luo, he looked at Lu Xianluo's expression and did not seem to be joking at all. He was a little hesitant. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that Qin Wushuang and the others had gone far away. He gritted his teeth and waved his hand. "Let's go." With that, he led a large number of black-clothed warriors and quickly followed Qin Wushuang. After Qin Wushuang and the others left, they immediately flew into the air. In this way, Luo, he was in a dilemma. The group of black-clothed warriors he led were all masters of the voiding realm, but they could not fly in the air. Although Luo, he was a master of the transformation void realm, when he saw that the other three were all masters of flying, even if he wanted to, he did not have the courage to chase after them. He stomped his feet, looked at the sky with hatred, took out the communication jade token, and sent a message. "Fourth Elder, just now a guy came to take something from Lu Xianlu. I am worried that Lu Xianlu has taken the thing away with him." "Who is that guy? Is he a disciple of Lu Xianlu?" the other party asked. Luo, he was stunned and shook his head. Judging from his tone, he should not be a disciple of Lu Xianlu. But that guy's cultivation seems to be very high. He should be a disciple of a big family. His bearing is very extraordinary. Surrounded by so many people, he was still very calm. I am afraid that Lu Xianlu, even if he did not know him, would dare to transfer the thing away. This old man would rather destroy the thing than leave it to head Dao warrior. Luo, he was almost gnashing his teeth in hatred, but there was nothing he could do. The other party pondered for a moment and no longer hesitated. "Describe that guy's appearance, and I will immediately convey it to head Dao warrior." Luo, he immediately described Qin Wushuang's current appearance. "There are three of them?" the fourth elder asked vigilantly. "That's right. All three of them looked very arrogant. I'm afraid that these three guys have some background. Otherwise, they would not be so arrogant." The fourth elder said with a complicated tone, "Luo, it is very likely that you have missed a great opportunity. Three people, don't forget who our head Dao warrior is looking for in the end for the compass." Luo Yi's heart twitched. He only felt sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy in his mouth, with mixed feelings. Suddenly, a name popped up his mind. Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang? Luo, he cried out involuntarily. Luo, you're eager to show yourself. How can you be so careless at such a critical moment? If those three people are really Qin Wushuang and his companions, you have missed a great opportunity this time. Haha, such a good opportunity was placed in front of you. But you missed it. Luo, he was still somewhat in disbelief. Can it be so coincidental? The fourth elder sighed. Sometimes it is just so coincidental. Well, anyway, that person has left. It is useless to regret. Just make up for it. I will immediately report this matter to the head Dao warrior and ask him to make a decision. Initially, this Luo, he was only a young disciple. After all, he was not a designated successor like Luo Ting. Thus, he was not qualified to communicate with someone like Luo Tongtian through spiritual perception. He could only communicate through this fourth elder, who held the highest position in the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Only then, he could send a message to Luo Tongtian. Luo, he felt extremely bitter as he said with hatred, Qin Wushuang, Qin Wushuang. Don't die too early. I'm still counting on you to make a great contribution. Luo, he was also an ambitious figure. Now that Luo Ting was dead, everyone was on the same level among the young generation of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Without Luo Ting's high position, everyone would fight for the position of the successor of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Therefore, Luo Yi had been particularly active recently. However, despite being active, what he had done in these days could be said to be useless. While Luo Yi was feeling remorseful, that fourth elder had passed the information reported by Luo Yi to the head Dao warrior Luo Tontian. Certainly, Luo Tontian had flipped out on the spot when he heard the news. Initially, Luo Tontian had been refining a weapon recently. Thus, he had not had the time to come out. After hearing this news, Luo Tontian even had the desire to strangle Luo Yi to death. However, up to this point, it would be useless to only get angry. Luo Tontian could only suppress the anger in his heart and instructed, "Send 2 law enforcement elders to the dragon origin plane. Regardless, we must stop those 3 guys. That bastard Lu Xianlu will certainly let them take away that jade plate." Luo Tontian and that Lu Xianlu had not been enemies for 1 or 2 years. He knew Lu Xianlu's style too well. As long as it was something Luo Tontian wanted, not only would he not give it away, he would think of ways to destroy it. As long as it was something Luo Tontian wanted to do, Lu Xianlu would think of ways to obstruct him. He would only feel happy when he had ruined the matter. The enmity between these two had been entangled for hundreds of years. The cause was a woman. That woman and Lu Xianlu were in love, but Luo Tontian snatched her away. As a result, the beautiful woman became depressed and died without any illness. It was also because of this that Lu Xianlu hated Luo Tontian so much that he wished he could eat his flesh and sleep on his skin. Unfortunately, his strength was lower than Luo Tontian's. As for Luo Tontian, his hatred for Lu Xianlu was not light either. He believed that if it were not for Lu Xianlu's existence, his woman would not have died of depression. Therefore, all these years, Luo Tontian had been thinking of ways to humiliate Lu Xianlu. Due to the pressure, he did not kill Lu Xianlu. However, he used different ways to humiliate Lu Xianlu. All these years, Lu Xianlu's life had not been easy. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 521. On the other hand, Qin Wushuang left the capital city of the Danxia prefecture quickly and found a remote place. He changed his outfit on the spot and put on a mask. Immediately, he changed his entire appearance. After he had finished everything, he rushed towards the profound dragon plain. He really wanted to know if it was truly people of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan that had stepped out. To him, this information was extremely important. If it was people of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, Qin Wushuang would never look on without lifting a finger. He would not let people of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan bleed for no reason. When he was about to arrive at the profound dragon plain, Qin Wushuang gradually slowed down his footsteps. He took out that jade plate and studied it. Then he arrived at the hidden layer mentioned by Lu Xianlu. He clicked it lightly with his finger, and a roll of silk map popped out from that hidden layer. Although the map was very simple with only a few lines, the terrain was very clear. Qin Wushuang looked at this map and saw that it was a place of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. The Divine Brilliance Prefecture was the prefecture where the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was located. It had a vast territory and many powerful powerhouses. It could be said that it was a place blessed by outstanding people. Additionally, since ancient times, many legends from the immemorial era had been passed down from that Divine Brilliance Prefecture. It had made many people fascinated. Therefore, the Divine Brilliance Prefecture had always been an extremely active prefecture in the Xianyuan Mount. As Qin Wushuang looked at this map, for a time, he did not know what mysterious place this map would lead to. Currently, he was still far away from the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Qin Wushuang did not think too much and put that map into his storage ring. Then he also put that jade plate into the ring. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived near the profound dragon plain. The profound dragon plain was located between 2 mountains. With a stream between the 2 mountains, it was named the Profound Dragon. That vast valley next to the stream of the Profound Dragon was named the Profound Dragon Plain. At this time, many martial artists had gathered around the Profound Dragon Plain. Clearly, these people wanted to witness this great battle. For your information, although the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan was in an extremely difficult situation, they were, after all, a first-rate powerhouse among the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. Currently, even a second-rate powerhouse like the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect dared to bare their fangs at the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Clearly, they had violated the authority of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Everyone wanted to see what kind of methods the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan would use to deal with the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. If the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect could inflict severe damage to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan during the process of resisting, it would be a great opportunity for the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Perhaps this opportunity could allow the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect to leap into the Dragon's Gate and become an undisputed first-rate powerhouse. It was even possible for them to occupy a seat among the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. While it was lively, at this moment, none of the parties involved in the Dragon Abyss Plain were present. However, judging from the traces of battle on the scene, it should be the aftermath of a fierce battle. Qin Wushuang blended into the crowd and coldly observed the traces of the scene. He continued to search for them, only to find that the people of these two forces seemed to have gone deep into the mountains. Qin Wushuang followed him into the depths of the mountain. The deeper they went, the tighter Qin Wushuang felt his heart tighten. Along the way, corpses kept lying on the side of the road. From the attire of these people, although the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect had occupied the majority, it seemed that a few disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had also died. Qin Wushuang's heart was heavy. As he watched the corpses of the disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan lying in the wilderness, he felt extremely sad. He took away each corpse he saw. Regardless of whether these disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain had died because of me, in the end, they had died at the hands of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. For this matter, I have an undeniable responsibility. Although I do not have the ability to bring the dead back to life, the only thing I can do is to send their souls back to their hometowns. Along the way, he had taken away close to 10 corpses. Towards the end, he slowly lost track of the trail. However, judging from the situation along the way, the battle should have been extremely bitter. Qin Wushuang was speechless. After some consideration, he decided to stop hesitating and continue to rush forward. Regardless of the situation, the earlier he arrived at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, the earlier he would fulfill his wish. When he returned to the Dragon Abyss Plain, many freelance martial artists had gradually dispersed. Qin Wushuang did not linger and continued his journey. Not long after Qin Wushuang had left the Dragon Abyss Plain, that Luo Yi had arrived at the Dragon Abyss Plain. Accompanying him was a skinny elder. He was the fourth elder, the person with the highest position in his clan. Fourth elder, if that person is Qin Wushuang, surely he would have come to this Dragon Abyss Plain. Luo Yi said solemnly. However, that fourth elder said, "I will come when I receive your news." Much time has been wasted in the middle. Even if he had come, he should have left by now. Luo Yi shook his head. Fourth elder, how could he be Qin Wushuang? I will not believe it, no matter what you say. The fourth elder said with a somewhat displeased tone, Luo Yi, this time you are too smart for your own good. You want to spy on Lu Xianlu, and you want to harass him openly. If you didn't have the name of the head Dao warrior to suppress Lu Xianlu, I am afraid you would all be dead now. Luo Yi felt incredibly ashamed, yet he still argued. Fourth elder, I was thinking for the head Dao warrior, for the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. If we had let Lu Xianlu take the jade plate, then it would be difficult for the head Dao warrior to get that thing. In the midst of their conversation, suddenly, two figures scuttled out from the deep mountain like lightning. They were two elite warriors dressed in the uniform of the law enforcement elders. Elder Sui Wei, Elder Han Xing, how was the battle? The position of the fourth elder in the sect was equivalent to ranking fourth among all the elders. Thus, he held a high position. Although these two law enforcement elders held many privileges, they would not dare to act presumptuously before the fourth elder. They spoke the truth. There are a total of 15 people from the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Only 5 or 6 of them are left after being surrounded by us. These 5 or 6 have already killed their way out of the encirclement. Our elite warriors have also chased after them in different directions. However, since they were able to break out of the heavy encirclement, it proves that they possess superior strength. This time, although there were people chasing after them, they did not have much hope of success. The fourth elder stopped and said to those 2 law enforcement elders, "I have received the order from the head Dao warrior to dispatch you 2 to assist in killing that Qin Wushuang. There's a clue here. Let Luoyi talk to you guys." However, those 2 law enforcement elders said in a low voice, "Fourth elder, I am afraid there is another matter that I must tell you guys. Along the way, disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had died in battle. However, when we were returning, we discovered that those corpses had all disappeared. There is such a strange thing." The fourth elder could not help but draw a breath of cold air. This kind of thing sounded eerie. The dead bodies had disappeared without a reason, and the ones that had disappeared were all disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Could it be that someone had deliberately moved the corpses of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan? Or perhaps there are still spies from the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan hiding in this area? Suddenly, that Luo Yi slapped his forehead. "Fourth elder, could it be that Qin Wushuang had truly escaped here?" The expression of the fourth elder changed. "Search with all your might. Also ask those onlookers." Those freelance martial artists kept being called over. Initially, they did not want to cooperate. Later on, under the strong pressure of the fourth elder, these people even found it difficult to breathe. They could only follow his orders. "Listen, my fourth elder has something to ask you guys. If you know something, then speak. If you don't speak nonsense. If you know something, if you don't speak, the consequences will not be something you can imagine." Luo Yi appeared to be a fox exploiting the tiger's might. "Not long ago, did you see anyone enter the deep mountains?" The fourth elder asked straightforwardly. "Yes, many people had gone in. However, they seem to have gone in for a while and then came out." "Then, were there any suspicious people that appeared with 3 people or 1 person with 2 spiritual beasts?" The fourth elder appeared to be extremely patient. 3 people? One of the freelance martial artists scratched his head. "I seem to remember that there were 3 people who appeared unfamiliar. These 3 people had gone in and came out after a long time. I remember that they seemed to have already left." "How long had they left?" Instantly, the fourth elder was moved inwardly. "It won't be long. It won't be more than an hour," that person said solemnly. "Not more than an hour?" Inwardly, the fourth elder was overjoyed. Half an hour. Even if they could fly, they would not have flown too far. Instantly, he took out the communication jade plate and contacted his allies of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect to come to their aid. They would set up a line of defense around the fortresses and main passes of the Danxia prefecture. Although the heavenly Luo Daoist sect did not have enough manpower to surround the Danxia prefecture, regardless, it would be the best choice to set up a defense at the main passes and fortresses. "Fourth elder, those 3 people must be Qin Wushuang." Luo Yi appeared somewhat excited. If it was truly Qin Wushuang, then without a doubt, Luo Yi had made some contributions. Immediately, Sui Yue and Han Xing, the 2 law-enforcing elders, followed the order and chased after them. These 2 law-enforcing elders were elite warriors at the profound void martial stage. They would only have the confidence to deal with Qin Wushuang if both of them went out at the same time. Or else, they would not have the confidence to let any one of them go. The fourth elder would be in charge of dispatching, and these 2 law-enforcing elders would be in charge of the pursuit. The other people who were setting up the defense at the border would be in charge of guarding the entrance. It was equivalent to setting up a secret, inescapable net. They would wait for Qin Wushuang to enter. On the other hand, after Qin Wushuang had left the profound dragon plane, he did not let down his guard. He knew that most likely his ruckus at Lu Xinluo's place had alerted Luo Tongtian. Now, he could only hope that Luo Tongtian would not come to greet him personally. If it was Luo Tongtian who came, the battle would become one-sided. They would not have any wishful thinking to face an elite warrior at the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage. Thus, to avoid Luo Tongtian's greeting, he could only continue to hide his identity. Only by not exposing his identity would it be a foolproof plan. As long as it was not an elite warrior at the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage, Qin Wushuang still had some confidence. Even if it was not at the perfect void martial stage, he would still have the chance to escape. These 2 days, I spent almost all my time in the bus and the venue. I am very tired. I finally wrote 2 chapters. Tomorrow I will fly to Shanghai, and the day after tomorrow I can go home. Haha, is brewing and exploding. Continue to ask for monthly votes. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 522. Qin Wushuang did not encounter any major battles at the profound Dragon Plain. Thinking of the death of those disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, Qin Wushuang felt waves of sadness. He already realized that regardless of whether he was willing or not, he was tied to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan's war chariot. However, Qin Wushuang was also unperturbed. He was well aware of the rules of this world. When a nest was overturned, no eggs would remain intact. If the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan were to fall, their enemies would certainly carry out a great purge of the Qin branches across the entire Xianyuan Mound. This purge would cause all the branches of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, and even all the people with the surname Qin in the Tianxian land to suffer. Therefore, regardless of whether Qin Wushuang was willing or not, this was the cruel reality that he must face. Standing at a mountain pass not far from the border of the Danxiao Prefecture, Qin Wushuang fixed his gaze to the front. He was waiting for the news. The Moon Palace Jade Hare, Sky Pilfered Mole, and Hissing Sky Phoenix he had sent out had already split up to scout the situation. Hissing Sky Phoenix was the first to return. The news he brought back made Qin Wushuang extremely surprised. Master, I am certain that people of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect are guarding each of the exits of the Danxiao Prefecture. However, their people can only defend those exits. For some small roads and passes, they cannot take care of all of them. Qin Wushuang smiled lightly. This way, it seems that our whereabouts have been exposed. However, for sure, they do not know our exact appearance. Therefore, this time we must make sure that the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect is empty-handed. Within 2 hours, Jade Hare and Mole had returned and reported to Qin Wushuang the exact situation they had scouted. Qin Wushuang spread out the map and said with a smile, "Look, the territory of this Danxiao Prefecture is open and outward-oriented. To leave the border, there is a fan-shaped exit on this map. We can go in any direction. According to the information you have collected, this northwest area should be the weakest area. However, if we head northwest to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, we will take a lot of unnecessary detours." Some lights shot out from Qin Wushuang's eyes as he said with a profound tone, "Let's not go to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan for our next stop. Not going to the Qin family? Where are we going?" Bao Bao was full of questions. "Let's take a detour to the Divine Brilliance Manor," Qin Wushuang said coldly. The light in his eyes grew brighter. To the Divine Brilliance Manor. From Qin Wushuang's eyes, Lone and Bao Bao had read the ruthless, murderous intent. "Boss, do you want to create havoc at the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect?" Bao Bao asked with his blood boiling. "Bao Bao, if we stay passive and wait for them to chase after us, we will only be in a passive state. We will never be able to turn the situation around. We might as well take the initiative to attack." Qin Wushuang continued to speak. "Now, since the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect has moved out on a large scale, for sure, the interior of the sect is even more empty. Thus, we only need to find an opportunity. Perhaps we will receive a miraculous effect." Naturally, this suggestion caused Bao Bao and Lone to feel extremely excited. In fact, they also felt aggrieved when they kept getting beaten passively. If they could take the initiative to attack and show the heavenly Luo Daoist sect some power, it would certainly be extremely exciting. Bao Bao said, "Boss, in the past when we took the initiative to attack, the results were surprisingly good. Also, since that senior Lu Xianlu had given us that map, he must have his reasons. We should go take a look. What if senior Lu Xianlu had left something unexpected for us?" These words were exactly what Qin Wushuang was thinking inwardly. Of course, they would not refuse when he asked for the opinion of those 5 sealed spiritual beasts. Instantly, Qin Wushuang and his group headed towards the northwest direction of the Danxia prefecture. Although theoretically, the defense of this area would be weaker, Qin Wushuang and his group did not dare to be overly optimistic. Of course, they had no reason to be pessimistic. Being a second-rate powerhouse, although the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was extremely powerful, in the end, they could not be compared to those first-rate powerhouses. Of course, despite being a second-rate sect, to the current Qin Wushuang, the strength of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was still a colossal existence. Not to mention those super elite warriors at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Even those at the perfect void martial stage would make Qin Wushuang feel extremely uncomfortable. And the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had close to 10 perfect void martial stage warriors, plus 20 or 30 profound void martial stage warriors. Such power structure allowed the heavenly Luo Daoist sect to hold a high position in the Xianyuan Mount. However, even with such powerful strength, it was still not easy to kill one person in the vast territory of the Xianyuan Mount. When Qin Wushuang arrived at the northwest border of the Danxia prefecture, this was a small border town. At this moment, even those 5 great spiritual beasts had transformed into human forms. Their group had 8 people. Although it attracted a lot of attention, it would reduce the guesses of the outside world. After all, Qin Wushuang's group of 3 was already an open secret of the Xianyuan Mount. As long as 3 people appeared, it would easily cause all kinds of guesses. This small border town was called the Morning Sun Town. To the Danxia prefecture, this small town could almost be ignored. To ordinary freelance martial artists and adventurers, this Morning Sun Town was a rather important place. At this Morning Sun Town, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had set up an ambush with a total of 4 people, and all of them were at the profound void martial stage. Although this strength was not super powerful, it was already a dazzling group. To all the defensive lines, this defensive entrance could only be counted as an intermediate level. After all, they did not have the help of a perfect void martial stage warrior. However, to Qin Wushuang and his group, for profound void martial stage warriors were also a great challenge. Of course, before Qin Wushuang and his group had come here, they had already made all the necessary preparations. They already had a strategy to deal with it. In a call on the west side of the Morning Sun Town, the 4 elders of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect gathered together. Among these elders, 3 had the surname Luo, and the remaining 1 had the surname Zhua. The leader was called Luo Zhan. He was a guy with a tall figure and scarlet eyebrows. Although this person was at the profound void martial stage, he was much stronger than most profound void martial stage warriors. This person was the leader of these 4. Now, Luo Zhan also unfolded a map and analyzed it. Look, if we depart from that profound dragon plane, there are a dozen of paths to exit the border. Our path is also among them. I don't know why, but in these past few days, I have a strange premonition that Qin Wushuang will pass through us. The other 3 elders all laughed. Zhan, this is the hope from your heart. Thus, you think it's a premonition. To tell you the truth, if that guy passes through here, this great merit will fall on our heads. Yes, it's truly unbelievable. It's a miracle that a kid from the human countries could make the heavenly Luo Daoist sect go to war. What human countries? It's clear that he is a chess piece set up by the heavenly Emperor Qin clan in secret. Humph, the heavenly Emperor Qin clan. By the way, speaking of the heavenly Emperor Mountain, this time, our second Dao warrior went to visit the Sound of Thunder sect and the heavenly punishing villa. I wonder how the discussion went. That Luo Zhan said with a cold sneer. Although they're all powerhouses of the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates, when dealing with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, they would rather have more people. How could there be any problems? Jean, say, if the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect can seize this opportunity and pull down the Heavenly Emperor mountain, would we have the chance to enter the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates? After a moment of thinking, Luo Zhan still gave a bitter smile and said, the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates are not that simple. Perhaps the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect can rank in the top 20 of the Xian Yuan Mount. However, don't forget, there are many first-rate powerhouses that are eyeing us covetously. There were 12 first-rate powerhouses in the Xian Yuan Mount. There were many indicators to distinguish the first-rate powerhouses. However, there was only one core. In this powerhouse, there must be an elite warrior of the Supreme Dao stage. As long as there was one elite warrior of the Supreme Dao stage, even if it was one that had just entered the Supreme Dao stage, it meant that this powerhouse had already reached a higher level. Even if the other indicators were lacking and they had fewer elite warriors, they would be qualified to be promoted to a first-rate powerhouse. In the Xian Yuan Mound, there were exactly 12 powerhouses that possessed the Supreme Dao stage. Of course, these 12 powerhouses did not include the totem powerhouse, the Xian Yuan clan. The Xian Yuan clan was high and aloof and detached from worldly affairs. There was no need to compare them here. Naturally, the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates were first-rate powerhouses. However, the first-rate powerhouses would not necessarily be the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates. The competition for the positions of these 8 gates was intense. Besides the 8 gates, there were 4 other first-rate powerhouses eyeing them covetously. In terms of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect, there were still some differences. This Luo Zhan had a clear understanding of himself. However, as long as the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect continued to develop with this momentum, if the head Dao warrior were to enter the Supreme Dao stage, that day would not be far away. While these 4 were sparring, suddenly, Luo Zhan stood up and looked downwards. In the distance, outside the Morning Sun town, 2 martial artists were walking towards them while talking and laughing. Someone is coming. Luo Zhan called out, and the 4 of them jumped into the hidden forest. They pricked up their ears and spread out their spiritual perception to observe. In a moment, those 2 had approached them. From the appearance of these 2, they did not seem to be in a hurry as they were moving at an incredibly slow speed. Big brother, do you truly want to go to the Divine Brilliance Prefecture? One of the fair-skinned and handsome young man asked a lean guy who was traveling with him. Of course, when have I ever lied? That lean guy answered. However, that Heavenly Luo Daoist sect is not an ordinary powerhouse. I always feel uneasy when dealing with them. Can we really get the million gold bounty? The fair-skinned young man was still somewhat hesitant. Don't worry, if they don't give me the money first, I will not tell them the information even if you beat me to death. Luo Zhan and the others have been secretly listening to the conversation between these 2. Inwardly, they were moved. Almost at the same time, they thought, could it be these 2 guys know the information related to that Qin Wushuang? At the moment, they listened even more attentively. That fair-skinned young man said again, Big brother, in fact, that Qin Wushuang is truly bold. Currently, people of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect are everywhere in the Danxia Prefecture. He still dared to come. Humph, that kid is extremely cunning. The Heavenly Luo Daoist sect is dreaming if they want to catch him with their numbers. Okay, we must move faster. Or else, haha. Big brother, I still don't understand. Since you have the information, why didn't you find those people in charge of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect at the Danxia Prefecture directly? And to go to that Divine Brilliance Prefecture, aren't you giving up what's close at hand to seek what's far away? What do you know? I will tell them now that he caught that kid in a few moves. Our contribution will not be reflected. We must let Qin Wushuang go far away. Then we will tell the secret to the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. This way, it will show the value of our information. Besides, there are only some law enforcement elders here. I don't believe that you want them to pay the million gold bounty on the spot. The 2 of them chatted and laughed as they walked over. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www Qijian. Calm. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 523. Luo Zhan and the others waited until the two turned the corner before revealing themselves. After exchanging glances with each other, Luo Zhan asked, "Do any of you know these two? Judging from their attire, they should be wandering cultivators. There are so many wandering cultivators in the world. How could we know them? These two actually know Qin Wushuang's whereabouts? Judging from their tone, they seem to have a card up their sleeves. No matter where Qin Wushuang goes, they will know." The other three elders looked at Luo Zhan, obviously waiting for him to make a decision. "What do you think?" Luo Zhan wasn't in a hurry to express his opinion. Instead, he asked for his companions' opinions. "I think these two aren't speaking without thinking. From what they said, Qin Wushuang's group should still be within Danxia Prefecture. Why don't we chase them back and interrogate them? Even if we force them to confess, we don't have to be afraid that they won't talk." This elder was called Luo Ba, and his style had always been swift and fierce. This suggestion was immediately approved by the other elders. They all looked at Luo Zhan, waiting for him to make a decision. Luo Zhan thought for a moment and felt that the two wandering cultivators shouldn't be much of a threat. He nodded and said, "All right, Luo Ba, Luo Xing, you two are responsible for bringing them back. Remember, do it cleanly." "Sai, they just left. It will only take 15 minutes to catch them." Luo Ba even felt that the two of them didn't need to go together. "Brother Zhan, I can go alone. Let Luo Xing stay here." Luo Zhan was steadfast. "Since we're going, we must make sure nothing goes wrong. It will be safer if two people go." Luo Ba didn't dare to disobey. He nodded and said, "Then let's go together. Brother Zhan, I'll have to trouble you here." Luo Zhan nodded indifferently. "Go. Be quick and come back quickly." Luo Ba and Luo Xing accepted the order and left. They quickly chased after the two wandering cultivators. They originally thought that it wouldn't be difficult to catch up to the two. However, they still hadn't caught up to them after 15 minutes following their auras. Luo Xing couldn't help but hesitate. "Brother Ba, could we have gone the wrong way?" Luo Ba said, "You are also an expert. Do you think we're chasing the wrong person?" Indeed, they had followed the auras of those two people all the way, so there was no way they would make a mistake. Furthermore, the aura continued to spread all the way down. This aura gave them the feeling that the two were right in front of them. However, this feeling led them to keep chasing forward, but even so, they couldn't catch up no matter what. After chasing them for about 2 hours, he still felt that the two of them were right in front of him. After more than 2 hours, there was still nothing. This caused them to fall into a dilemma, and it was hard to back down. Either give up or move on. On Luo Zhan's side, Elderswa and Elderswa still remained where they were. Suddenly, two more people appeared from the opposite side. These two people were running towards them at lightning speed. After the two of them ran out of the pass, they flew into the air and quickly flew forward. "Boss, we finally made it out of the Danxia Prefecture. Haha, let's go. This voice sounded extremely cheerful and full of joy. "Next stop, the Heavenly Emperor Mountain." That person called Boss responded and sped away. Inwardly, Luo Zhan and Elders were shocked. They looked at the horizon with astonishment and immediately chased after them. It was because almost at the same time, a thought flashed across their minds. Qin Wushuang. The direction these two people were flying in was completely different from the direction the previous two had left in. Luo Zhan and Elders were chased after them quickly and instantly. They had chased a few hundred miles away. When they turned into a mountain valley, suddenly those two dropped down into this valley. Luo Zhan knew that most likely the other party had discovered their pursuit. Instantly, he made a hand gesture and also chased after them. They also dropped into the valley. "Come out," that Elders was said with a cold sneer. "What do you think you can hide in here?" Although Luo Zhan felt that the strength of the other party would not pose any threat, he did not dare to let down his guard. He knew that this matter was of utmost importance. If the other party was Qin Wushuang, then he must be 120% alert. While that Elderswa was still cursing, Luo Zhan did not speak a word and observed the surrounding situation with a cold sneer. Suddenly, his gaze stopped at a giant tree on the opposite side. Two people walked out from behind the giant tree, and one of them said with a cold sneer, "Who said we're going to hide?" When Luo Zhan saw these two people, he exchanged a glance with that elder Zhua. With a jump, he dropped to the opposite side and was only a few dozen meters away from those two. You two, who are you? Why are you sneaking around? Leave your names." Elder Zhua asked coldly. "Who is sneaking around?" One of them said leisurely, "It seems that you are the ones sneaking around, right? Why are you following behind us? Are you scheming something?" Luo Zhan still did not let down his guard as he sized these two people before him and said lightly, "Everyone is smart. Straightforward people do not speak in riddles. We are elders of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. We know your identity. Why don't you speak frankly?" "Heavenly Luo Taoist sect." One of the young men smiled lightly and said with interest, "Then you must think that one of us is Qin Wushuang, right?" "Ha ha ha. Then, are you or are you not?" Luo Zhan asked with a gloomy tone. That person smiled lightly. "If I say no, you will be disappointed. Could it be that you want to kill us to vent your anger? If I say yes, you will be wild with joy, right?" Murderous intentions emerged from Luo Zhan's face. "Regardless, since you are here, don't think about leaving." That young man still carried that playful smile on his face. "Then I will tell you the truth. I am Qin Wushuang. You have found the right person." The expression on Luo Zhan and Elder Zhua changed drastically as the other party had admitted it. This was completely out of their expectations. Even if the other party was him, he would have denied it flatly. If he was not, he would have denied it to the end. However, the other party had admitted it. This made Luo Zhan and Elder Zhua feel extremely surprised. As soon as this feeling of surprise passed, a wave of coldness emerged from their back. "Are you truly Qin Wushuang?" Luo Zhan inhaled a breath of cold air and asked coldly. Qin Wushuang said leisurely, "Of course." As soon as he had finished speaking, suddenly, Luo Zhan felt a wave of strong movements from the ley lines. Suddenly, the entire surrounding terrain shook violently. Next, suddenly, a wave of black clouds pressed down from the sky. A body as big as a mountain pressed down directly. This giant spiritual beast smashed down from the sky and spat out rainbows from its mouth as it tried to swallow Luo Zhan. This wave of suction was extremely powerful and caused Luo Zhan's entire body to tremble. Instantly, Luo Zhan realized that something was wrong as he shouted, "We have fallen into a trap. Zhua gang, quickly send your spiritual perception to the others and ask them to come to the outside of the Morning Sun town to help." Qin Wushuang laughed. "It's too late." That elder Zhua gang, did not have time to take out his spiritual perception communication J tablet. In midair, a fireball as red as the blazing sun directly sprayed over and crashed into his chest. This wave of power was overbearing and vigorous. Moreover, it carried a very strong burning power. It made Zhua gang feel as if his entire body was about to melt. His muscles tightened as if his skin was about to burn immediately. Zhua gang shouted loudly and rushed forward to shake off this powerful fireball attack. This fireball rushed over, turned, and circled around Zhua gang's chest. It was just that it was tangled up, and almost at the same time, a beam of white light pierced out from the slanted ground. With his unique light, the unique light on his forehead shone brightly. It was like a super sharp blade that drilled over. The power of this drilling attack rushed out streams of spiraling energy, twisting the void. This made Zhua gang unable to breathe at all as he rushed forward with all his might. However, his speed was too fast, causing him to almost lose control of his body. The pincer attack of the two powerful forces caused Zhua gang's moves to be exhausted. Qin Wushuang saw it clearly. Both of his hands moved continuously. The sword chi of the coagulated sword brought out a colorful impact force. It was like a loaded bullet that continuously shot towards Zhua gang's chest. Qin Wushuang was almost directly in front of Zhua gang. This coagulated sword was no longer the same as before. It was at the third level and was also the peak sword essence that Qin Wushuang could unleash currently. The third level, Gang Sword. When this Gang Sword was shot out, its attack power was naturally imaginable. Although he was an expert of the profound void martial stage, under the situation where his defense was exhausted, he was unable to dodge the third wave of attack. Moreover, Qin Wushuang's coagulated sword was majestic, and Zhuge Gang could not dodge at all. It was as if he had become a target and was directly hit by Qin Wushuang. This Gang Sword, 10 consecutive strikes, did not miss. All of them were concentrated on Zhuge Gang's chest. Almost at the same time, Zhuge Gang's body suddenly stopped. He looked at Qin Wushuang in disbelief. His eyes were completely filled with astonishment. He opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. His eyes gradually dimmed. Bang! Zhuge Gang pushed the golden mountain and the jade pillar. His body directly fell down, and he could not get up again. Luo Zhan saw this scene from the corner of his eyes and could not help but tremble. He was restrained by pure, ultra-precious pig and could not spare any limbs to help Zhuge Gang. The most important thing was that he did not expect Zhuge Gang to be defeated so quickly. One should know that although Zhuge Gang's cultivation was not as high as Luo Zhan's, it was not to the extent that he would be defeated in a few moves. If Zhuge Gang was defeated so easily, then Luo Zhan would not have any chance at all. When he thought of this, half of his heart turned cold. His body rushed quickly, jumped out of the battle circle, and wanted to run away. How could pure, ultra-precious pig allow him to escape? It roared loudly and charged forward without regard for its own safety. This fighting style made Luo Zhan's whole body tremble. It was simply a desperate fight. That one-horn mystical horse and hissing sky phoenix also rushed over from the other two sides almost at the same time. The 3-in-1 encirclement did not even give Luo Zhan a chance to escape. He could only grit his teeth and hold the battle blade in his hand. His entire body congealed into a ball of sharp light and slashed at hissing sky phoenix. It was a fighting style that risked his life. Qin Wushuang looked at this scene leisurely. He already held the He Jimin breaking formation spear in his hand. Vividly, through this battle, he felt that he had gained some new knowledge regarding the comprehension of the void martial stage. Finally, I'm back in Shanghai. I'll be home tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 524. Luo Zhan's body was like a ball of raging flame as he dashed towards hissing sky phoenix. The force of the dash tore the space apart and arrived in front of hissing sky phoenix. The sound of the air exploding in the void brought about waves of electromagnetic airflow and distorted chirps. The ear-piercing chirps pierced through the sky and startled all the birds and beasts in the surrounding mountains. All of them fled in panic. In an instant, it was as if the earth had been broken and the sky had been shattered. Hissing Sky Phoenix was not afraid of Luo Zhan's imposing manner. However, it knew that it could not take the attack head-on. It flashed and launched 2 fireballs from the side. The 2 fireballs pierced through the sky like 2 fire dragons and shot towards Luo Zhan's ribs. Luo Zhan had just obtained the space to break through. When he was hit by the 2 fire dragons, he felt extremely uncomfortable. However, he did not dare to stay any longer and continued to dash forward. Moving forward was his only choice and the only way for him to survive. If he could not break through the encirclement immediately, what awaited him would be death. At the thought of this, Luo Zhan chose to break through the encirclement immediately, even if he might be injured. However, the 3 spiritual beasts of the profound void realm had been working together for many years. Their tacit understanding of battle tactics had reached an unbelievable level. Hissing Sky Phoenix had just reached the end of the trajectory of the 2 fireballs. One-horn mystical horse had already charged over and blocked Luo Zhan's path. Luo Zhan did not stop his attack. He maintained his charging posture and slashed his saber towards one-horn mystical horse. Unlike Hissing Sky Phoenix, One-horn mystical horse's strength lay in head-on attacks. In a head-on attack, one-horn mystical horse was not afraid of any experts of the same realm. Seeing the ray of light approaching, the horn on one-horn mystical horse's forehead suddenly expanded in the wind. It was like a knight's spear and went against the saber light directly. The two murderous auras collided in the air and created a terrifying roar. Distorted ripples spread out rapidly in the void. The strong sound of metal colliding spread out along with the ripples. The sound reverberated around the valley. Luo Zhan and one-horn mystical horse collided head-on. Luo Zhan's hand was numb, and he took a few steps back to stop his blood from boiling. What a powerful impact! Luo Zhan was even more worried. Of course, one-horn mystical horse's situation wasn't any better than Luo Zhan's. However, the 12 sealed spirit beasts were extremely ferocious. Even though they were at a disadvantage in a head-on clash, they would never back down. Moreover, it knew that the other party would definitely not feel any better than it did. Yi Jiao mystical horse suppressed his boiling blood energy and glared at Luo Zhan like a tiger eyeing its prey. He grinned hideously and said, "Old man, you have some skills. However, if you want to pass through me, Yi Jiao, there is no way." Luo Zhan felt a wave of helplessness in his heart. Looking at the encirclement coming from all directions, he knew that it would be extremely difficult to successfully break through today. Turning his head, his gaze rested on Qin Wushuang. Suddenly, he thought, this Qin Wushuang has been hiding far away, not daring to come over and fight. His own cultivation was definitely inferior to these spirit beasts. I can let him enter the battle and seize the opportunity to capture him. A rare commodity worth hoarding. As long as we capture Qin Wushuang, we will have the initiative in our hands. Thinking of this, Luo Zhan felt a wave of joy in his heart. He knew that this was his best choice at the moment, and also his only chance. If he could not obtain this opportunity, he was afraid that he would die with a grievance today. Immediately, he waved his battle saber and laughed. "You 3 against 1. Why should I be afraid? Even if you 4 against 1, I will still take on all of you." Luo Zhan spoke boldly, but when he thought of his companion's Wagang being defeated so easily, he was a little uncertain. However, he had no way out now. Fight! He could only fight for a way out by fighting with all his might. Thinking of this, not only did Luo Zhan not continue to run forward, but his body also descended. His momentum was very fast, and he actually dashed directly towards Qin Wushuang. Although there was still Hissing Sky Phoenix between Qin Wushuang and Luo Zhan's momentum obviously ignored the existence of Hissing Sky Phoenix. Hissing Sky Phoenix shouted, "Master, please step back." The 3 spirit beasts at the profound void martial stage all knew that Qin Wushuang's cultivation was only at the refined void martial stage. In such a battle, theoretically, he would not be of any use. He might even become a burden. However, Qin Wushuang was not an ordinary expert at the refined void martial stage. He roared, "Let him come over." As he spoke, Qin Wushuang flapped his wings, and the Overlord breaking formation spear swept in the air. A spear radiance was like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue. It was extremely fast, and it shot towards Luo Zhan's forehead. Qin Wushuang consecutively shot out more than 10 spears. The speed of the spear was so fast that even Luo Zhan, an expert at the profound void martial stage, felt a little surprised. Luo Zhan had never heard of such a spear force before. It actually contained different spiritual power attributes and formed various mysterious mysteries. The twisted attribute attacks were mixed together and formed a complicated attack wave that rolled towards Luo Zhan. This attack made Luo Zhan feel as if he was facing more than 10 opponents at the same time, and they were all attacking him at the same time. This one spear of Qin Wushuang's seemed to have transformed into the attack characteristics of the 18 classes of weapons. It had overwhelmed Luo Zhan. Originally, with his strength at the profound void martial stage, if he was facing an attack from an ordinary expert at the refined void martial stage, he could simply ignore it. He could completely sweep it away with a sweep of his palm. However, Qin Wushuang's realm was definitely not comparable to an ordinary expert at the refined void martial stage. Qin Wushuang had been baptized by the divine path. His attack power and realm had always been much stronger than those of the same realm. This was also the biggest reason why Qin Wushuang could repeatedly contend with people at a higher realm with a lower cultivation level. Under such a powerful attack, even Luo Zhan did not dare to let down his guard at all. He stopped attacking with his long saber and guarded the door first. This was because Qin Wushuang's attacks were like poisonous snakes that seemed to be everywhere. If he did not guard the door well, he might suddenly be attacked. Luo Zhan, as an outstanding expert at the profound void martial stage, actually chose to defend when facing a cultivator at the refined void martial stage. If there were onlookers at the side, they would definitely feel inexplicably surprised. It was because this was the most common knowledge in the martial arts world. Not to mention the profound void martial stage. Even an elite warrior at the transformation void martial stage could ignore the attack from an elite warrior at the refined void martial stage. After all, after entering the void martial stage, the difference between any two levels was apparent. It was not easy to make up for it. However, Qin Wushuang's attacks were like moving clouds and flowing water. It made it impossible for one to guess the real situation and predict his next move. Because of this, besides using his advantage in strength, Luo Zhan did not have any other choice. However, if he were to take it head-on, it would be equivalent to a lack of changes and a passive reaction. The power of the attack would be greatly reduced. Since Qin Wushuang had the advantage of the purple cloud yin-yang wings, he was not afraid of Luo Zhan's attack. Especially for such passive counterattack, he could not unleash 100% of his power. He lifted his wings slightly, and his body disappeared before Luo Zhan like a cool breeze. In the next moment, Luo Zhan only felt a sudden attack from behind. Qin Wushuang held the spear with one hand and opened his 5 fingers with the other hand. As each of his fingers shot out, the sword qi of the gang sword from the coagulated sword kept shooting out. Qin Wushuang felt as if he was pulling the trigger and shooting out bullets. The power of this gang sword was extraordinary. Even an elite warrior at the profound void martial stage would not dare to take a hit from it. Behind the large and open attacks of this coagulated sword, there was an agility and lightness that weapons did not possess. To Luo Zhan, such rapid attacks were the most difficult to bear. Luo Zhan waved his battle blade and rolled out waves of blade shields in front of him to protect the vital parts of his body. Inwardly, he was both anxious and angry. He realized that perhaps it was Qin Wushuang's plan to lure Luo Ba and Luo Xing away. He wanted to separate the 4 elite warriors at the profound void martial stage and achieve the goal of dividing their power. In this way, Qin Wushuang and the others could concentrate on dealing with the 2 of them and defeat them in batches. Thinking of this, Luo Zhan looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. His battle blade danced even more fiercely. He knew that at this moment, the most important thing was to not lose his footing. Once he lost his footing, he would be easily defeated by the opponent. Only now did Luo Zhan realize that Qin Wushuang, who came from the human countries, did have some skills. No wonder Luo Ting, such an outstanding young man, also fell in his hands. Even he, who was experienced, felt extremely uncomfortable facing Qin Wushuang's endless attack methods. This kind of discomfort was not the helplessness when facing an absolute elite. He clearly felt that he could defeat Qin Wushuang, but he did not launch an attack comfortably. From the beginning, it seemed that the initiative of the battle did not belong to him. This kind of battle made Luo Zhan feel that he could not display his power. This Qin Wushuang, relying on a pair of wings and a whole body of strange attack methods, was actually able to make Luo Ting feel that he could not win easily without using the graceful spiritual bow. Not being able to win under this kind of situation was synonymous with failure, because beside him, there were 3 profound void martial stage spirit beasts that were eyeing him covetously and could attack him at any time. Any one of these 3 profound void martial stage spirit beasts was enough to make him fall into a difficult battle, not to mention that there were 3 of them at the same time, plus this abnormal Qin Wuxuang. The anxiety in Luo Zhan's heart grew heavier and heavier. He repeatedly howled in an attempt to call Luo Ba and Luo Xing back. If the 3 profound void martial stage elders joined forces, he might not be able to win, but the situation would be much easier. He could also calmly deal with them. Whether to fight or to retreat, he would have sufficient choice. Qin Wuxuang kept changing his moves and used his previous consummate skills one after another. As Qin Wuxuang's realm continued to increase, the power of these ultimate skills would naturally continue to be developed. They would not be inferior just because of the increase in level. This was especially true for the Heavenly Pulse Condensed Sword, which had a distribution of realms, making it even easier to use. On the other hand, rather than calling it a move, it would be better to call it a mental cultivation method. To be precise, it was a combat skill. Qin Wuxuang wielded the spear in one hand and the coagulated sword in the other. Together with the purple cloud yin-yang wings, the more he fought, the more he learned. He felt calm and confident, as if he was not facing a profound void martial artist, but a cultivator of the same level. This kind of confidence was an invisible increase in his realm. At this moment, Qin Wuxuang was still slow to realize what had happened. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 525. However, it was this hindsight that allowed Qin Wuxuang to grasp the essence of the void martial stage. The void martial stage was not the spiritual martial force. It was no longer about the accumulation of spiritual qi. The spiritual martial force was only the stage of the accumulation of spiritual qi. When the spiritual qi had formed the essence in the dantian and condensed into the primordial spirit, it would be the void martial stage. The core of the void martial stage was the word void. This word meant that the training of the void martial stage was no longer about the continuous accumulation of spiritual qi. It had already passed the stage of the accumulation of spiritual qi. The advancement of the void martial stage relied on the consolidation and continuous tempering of the primordial spirit. In tempering the primordial spirit, the training of the dantian was one aspect. Comprehension and meditation were another aspect. In the primordial spirit stage, it was possible for one to gain some insight during training. It was also possible for one to suddenly realize something while walking. It was also possible for one to have a flash of inspiration while meditating. Thus, the miraculous feeling Qin Wuxuang was currently experiencing was in fact a positive sign for him in the void martial stage. It was also a qualitative change that he had accumulated through continuous quantitative changes. This was a fortuitous opportunity. Of course, at this moment, Qin Wuxuang did not think too much about these things. Instead, he was immersed in this great battle. To him, this battle was not a life and death battle, but a form of enjoyment. Qin Wuxuang became more courageous as the battle went on. Each of his moves was easy and relaxed. If it were someone who did not know the truth, they would have an illusion when they saw this battle. They would feel that this was a battle between 2 elite warriors of the same level, and not a battle between 2 elite warriors with a difference of 2 levels. Compared to Qin Wuxuang's relaxed manner, Luo Zhan even had the heart to die. He never thought that he would be forced into a dilemma by a young man. Of course, it was not because he was not strong enough, but because he could not unleash his full power. Firstly, it was because of Qin Wuxuang's restraint. Secondly, it was because of the 3 profound void martial stage spiritual beasts eyeing him covetously. The pressure from these 2 aspects caused Luo Zhan to be unable to fully unleash his abilities. The 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage were also in awe. Obviously, they didn't expect that their master, whose cultivation level was obviously lower than his opponents, could be on par with him. Although he had the advantage of the purple cloud yin-yang wings, It was enough for a refined void martial stage cultivator to make a profound void martial stage cultivator so embarrassed. Pure ultra precious pig was the first to lose his patience. The fat on his body shook exaggeratedly as he roared, "Master, this old pig will pig you." Treasure Pig took large strides and rushed into the air, striking with both fists. His fist whistled through the air and smashed toward Luo Zhan's face. This kind of attack was simple and crude, but it was also the most practical. When the fist smashed over, Luo Zhan only felt a stifling sensation in his chest. It was as if the surrounding airflow had been swept up by the astral winds of this fist and condensed into this fist as it blasted over. The ripples in the void vibrated, and a protruding vortex appeared. Of course, it was impossible for Luo Zhan to take this punch head-on, because at this moment, any head-on collision could cause him to take a step closer to the abyss of death. The other party had 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage. They had enough capital to take turns to fight him and exhaust his spiritual power. Luo Zhan quickly retreated along with the fist aura, opening a path with his battle saber. Obviously, he was on guard against the pincer attack of one-horned mythical beast and hissing sky phoenix. However, being surrounded like this, it was extremely difficult for him to avoid being attacked from all sides. Therefore, although he seemed to have retreated, in fact, he didn't escape from any danger. Hissing sky phoenix and one-horned mythical beast flanked him from both sides and rushed over. Qin Wushuang's purple cloud yin-yang wings were like a ghost, and he had already arrived in front of Luo Zhan. With his 5 fingers raised, the gang's sword shot out continuously like bullets. The speed was so fast that it was as if raindrops were falling down on one's face. Luo Zhan was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He activated his genuine qi again and whistled continuously. He was also puzzled as to why Luo Ba and Luo Xing had not returned from chasing those 2 fellows with mediocre strength. How would he know that those 2 fellows with mediocre strength were actually the Jade Hare and the Mole in human form? These 2 spiritual beasts were most proficient in the art of topography. Naturally, they could easily lead Luo Ba and Luo Xing to play hide-and-seek and lure them away from the battlefield. Therefore, no matter how Luo Zhan whistled, he didn't get any response. While he was distracted, he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. A young rush sword had shot into his shoulder blade. The power of the coagulated sword was not to be underestimated, especially the gang sword that was condensed. It was even more powerful. Luo Zhan's heart twitched. He rushed forward without caring about anything else. He threw a spiritual talisman into the air and wanted to escape with the help of the spiritual talisman. At this moment, the pure, ultra-precious pig behind him opened its mouth and breathed out a puff of smoke. It directly enveloped the surrounding airflow and formed an absolute vacuum state. With this suction, the spiritual talisman that Luo Zhan threw out didn't even have time to activate before it was sucked away by the precious pig's powerful suction force. Almost at the same time, the one-horned mystical horse had already arrived. With an imposing manner that could break everything, it drilled into Luo Zhan's chest. Luo Zhan's body rose continuously. He slashed at the one-horned mystical light and borrowed the momentum to rush upwards. Boom! The hissing sky phoenix's sharp claws directly clawed down. Countless claws condensed in the air pressed down one after another. Luo Zhan, accept your fate, Qin Wushuang said resolutely. The Overlord formation-breaking spear was fully activated and pierced towards Luo Zhan's throat. Suddenly, he pushed with both hands. A circular vortex of airflow pushed the Overlord formation-breaking spear up and out. The pushing force instantly increased the Overlord formation-breaking spear's speed by more than 10 times. This was the evolution of the deep core style. Qin Wushuang pushed out all the deep core force with the spear's movement speed as the priority. Like an arrow leaving the bow, the spear pierced towards Luo Zhan's neck with all its might. Luo Zhan was besieged by 3 spiritual beasts and had nowhere to escape. With a cry of Aya, he shrunk his neck and was about to evade. However, even if he could evade the first move, how could he evade Qin Wushuang's second move? Unknowingly, Qin Wushuang had followed the same pattern with a violet sun sword and shot towards Luo Zhan's chest. With a poof sound, suddenly, Luo Zhan's pupils contracted rapidly. It seemed that his entire body had been fixed in place. Suddenly, he stopped in the middle of the air and different complicated colors flashed across his eyes. Despair and anger came in waves. He swung the battle blade from his hand and slashed at the enemy with all his strength. Qin Wushuang gave a contemptuous smile. He flapped his wings and flew more than 300 meters away. Rising and falling, he appeared confident and at ease. Luo Zhan felt sorrowful as he watched him. Every generation had new talents. Just as Luo Zhan was on the verge of death, he realized that he was already old. He could no longer stop the rise of the younger generation. This Qin Wushuang, without a doubt, he would become a source of disaster for the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Luo Zhan only felt that his dantian was shrinking. Inside his dantian, his primordial spirit was rapidly retreating. This was the sign of death, and it was a death that not even a divine being could save. At this time, Luo Zhan no longer had the time to worry about his own life. He had tried everything, yet he was powerless to send his spiritual perception to the Dao warrior of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect through the communication jade plate. Carrying unwillingness and anger, Luo Zhan's breathing gradually stopped. He fell to the ground in despair and raised a cloud of dust. An elite warrior at the profound void martial stage had fallen like this in this nameless valley. Qin Wushuang withdrew his stance and instructed, "Heavenly Phoenix, you are in charge of taking care of the aftermath. Bao Bao, you go help alone. Guard the front with him and don't let any random people come in. I will take them and regroup with Mole, Jade Hair, and the others. The other two are still waiting for us to take care of them." Bao Bao laughed. With this leader dead, the rest is much easier to take care of. Currently, Luo Ba and Luo Xing were feeling extremely helpless because of Mole and Jade Hair. Despite the rising anger in their heart, they could not do anything. In terms of strength, they were all elite warriors at the profound void martial stage and were certainly stronger than Mole and Jade Hair. However, Jade Hair and Mole had a unique advantage. In such a game, they could not unleash their strength. When they were exhausted from chasing after them, they realized that they were already rushing back. While they were feeling surprised, one-horned mystical horse had already arrived. Pure Altar Precious Pig also followed after him. After Hissing Sky Phoenix had finished taking care of the aftermath, he also joined the battle group. It was much easier to take care of these two. Qin Wushuang did not even need to make a move, and victory was already in his hands. These two fought like trapped beasts. In the end, they could not resist the advantage of numbers, and both died with grievances. Up to this point, all four elite warriors at the profound void martial stage outside the Morning Sun Town had fallen. To the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, this was definitely a huge blow. Although to the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, the profound void martial stage was not a fatal loss. Elite warriors at this level were the backbone of the sect. With four of them dead, it was a great loss. When Bao Bao and Lone saw that the battle had ended, they came to regroup. Bao Bao said excitedly, "Boss, this is a good strategy. Ha ha ha. When the heavenly Luo Daoist sect chased after us, we killed a few of them. That's right, boss. We must fight this way." Initially, the core of the strategy that Qin Wushuang had thought of was to separate the four of them. From there, they would gather all of their advantages and attack two of them together. This would achieve the effect of breaking them one by one. Each part of this strategy, including the dialogue and the route they would take, had been carefully designed according to the map. Thus, when used, Luo Zhan and the others had fallen into the trap without realizing it. The expression of Luo Ba and Luo Xing before their death had explained everything. Clearly, they would never have dreamed that this was a trap set up by Qin Wushuang. When they had realized the situation, they were already on their last breaths and struggling on the verge of death. After killing the 4 people, the situation at the scene was too desperate. After Qin Wushuang had destroyed the bodies, he did not spend any effort to restore the scene. It was because with such a messy situation, it would be impossible to restore it to its original state. Sooner or later, people of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect would also discover this place. However, at the moment, Qin Wushuang needed to cherish time as if it was gold. He needed to catch the enemy by surprise and gain the initiative by striking first. Thus, Qin Wushuang did not linger. After he had cleaned up the mess, he rushed towards the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com to read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 526. The distance between the Danxia Prefecture and the Divine Brilliance Prefecture was also extremely far. However, once he arrived at the Divine Brilliance Prefecture, he would not be far from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Thus, although Qin Wushuang was not heading directly to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, in fact, he was only taking a detour. The extra journey would not affect the journey too much. This journey would take at least a month. Along the way, Qin Wushuang was studying the map Lu Xianlu had given him. This map was hidden inside the observant finger jade plate. Although it was not a big map, it had marked many important geographical locations. Although Qin Wushuang did not know what kind of map it was, he knew that it was not ordinary. Or else, Lu Xianlu would not have treated it with such seriousness. On the other hand, the main elite warriors of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect had set up an inescapable net around the Danxia Prefecture. They did not know that Qin Wushuang had already broken through their defense line and left. On the 3rd day after the incident, Luo Tongtian arrived at the Danxia Prefecture and started to contact all the elite warriors. He discovered that there was no news from the 4 elders at the Morning Sun Town. Instantly, Luo Tongtian realized that something was wrong. He did not have the time to find Lu Xianlu and rushed to the Morning Sun Town immediately. Although Qin Wushuang had already cleaned up the scene, traces of the battle still existed. Only, since he did not find the bodies, it made Luo Tongtian wonder if something had happened to those 4 elders. After observing the scene, Luo Tongtian and the other higher-ups of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect were certain that a great battle had occurred at this place. Currently, they could not contact Luo Zhan and the other 3. A strange sense of crisis spread out from the bottom of Luo Tongtian's heart. Head Dao warrior, Luo Zhan is considered a core figure of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. If it weren't for special circumstances, he would not have left his post, and it would be impossible to contact him. I am afraid that this situation is not good. This person was Tian Mingshan, the 3rd Dao warrior who had been in charge of this encirclement. This person was the publicly recognized number 3 figure in the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. His strength was only second to the head Dao warrior and the 2nd Dao warrior at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Although he had not entered the exquisite mysterious boundary stage, he was unquestionably the strongest among the perfect void martial stage. He was already on the path of a breakthrough and could enter the exquisite mysterious boundary stage at any moment. Luo Tongtian remained silent. He tried to use the communication jade token to contact Luo Zhan again, but to no avail. Not long after, Luo Tongtian opened his mouth and said, "Looks like Luo Zhan and the others are already doomed." Although everyone had already vaguely guessed this possibility, but when these words came out of Luo Tongtian's mouth, it still made them palpitate. 4 profound void stage elders died, just like that. Head Dao warrior, Luo Zhan, and the others are all profound void martial artists, and there are 4 of them. Although there are many elite warriors in the Xian Yuan Mound, not many of them could kill an elite warrior at the profound void martial stage, right? If 4 profound void martial stage martial artists died in the hands of the same person, then it had to be at least someone in the exquisite profound realm to be able to do it. Even if one was at the perfect void martial stage, it would be almost impossible to kill 4 profound void martial stage warriors at once. After all, these 4 living people were not living targets. They would not have waited to be killed in the same place. Could it be the heavenly Emperor Qin clan again? Another elder said angrily. Rich, murderous intentions flashed across Luo Tongtian's eyes as he waved his hand. This morning's Sun Town is a remote place. If the heavenly Emperor Qin clan were to attack the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, certainly they would not have chosen Luo Zhan and the others. The others were not attacked at all. I am only worried that it was still Qin Wushuang and his group that killed Luo Zhan and the others. Qin Wushuang again? Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief, especially Tian Mingshan, the 3rd Dao warrior, as he said with astonishment, "Head Dao warrior, we have collected all the information about that Qin Wushuang. Regardless of how fast he has improved his strength, certainly he does not have the power to kill 4 elite warriors at the profound void martial stage at once." Information? There is a trace of displeasure in Luo Tongtian's tone. Could it be that Luo Ting's death did not give everyone enough warning? If the information was terrifying, how could Luo Ting have died at the hands of Qin Wushuang? At that time, according to our information, Qin Wushuang was only an ant that had not even entered the void martial stage. What was the result? Luo Ting was chased by this Qin Wushuang for 100,000 miles, and still, he did not escape with his life. That Qin Wushuang had summoned 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage out of nowhere. Whenever Luo Tongtian remembered Luo Ting's cry for help before his death, his heart ached. Luo Ting's death had dealt a tremendous blow to the heavenly Luo Daoist sect in the Xian Yuan Mound, who was not laughing at the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Who did not know that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it? On the contrary, a kid from the human countries had killed their most prided successor, Luo Ting, head Dao warrior. This way, this Qin Wushuang has already developed into a great calamity for the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. From Tian Mingshan's tone, there was a trace of unwillingness. Indeed, to allow a kid from the human countries to turn the heavenly Luo Daoist sect in such an embarrassing situation. This matter was truly vexing and embarrassing. Just thinking about it made him furious. Mingshan, is there any movement from the human countries? After all, Luo Tongtian was the leader of a sect. Naturally, he would not grumble unnecessarily under such circumstances. Tian Mingshan said, "Our people have already infiltrated the human countries through various channels. Regardless of investigating openly or secretly, we have all kinds of methods. However, that Qin Wushuang had clearly made all the preparations. His family in the secular world and his elite warriors of the sect have all disappeared. Up to this point, we have found nothing." Nothing? When he heard these words, Tian Mingshan's heart burned with anger. Since when had the mere human countries become such a hard bone to chew? Head Dao warrior, for sure that Qin Wushuang had made all the arrangements. His secular family, the heavenly King Manor, only had those servants, the advisors, and the army of the King Manor. As for Qin Wushuang's father, sister, and those death warriors, they were not at the mansion. And Qin Wushuang's sect, the Stargaze Palace, from the Palace Master to the core disciples and the higher-ups, were not at the Stargaze Palace. When Tian Mingshan said here, clearly, he felt somewhat resentful. How could this Qin Wushuang look like someone from the human countries? Even those major sects of a Xian Yuan Mound were not this difficult to deal with. Of course, this was also related to the fact that they had not paid enough attention in the beginning. Now, they had paid enough attention, and even the head Dao warrior had stepped out. However, this Qin Wushuang had already taken care of the aftermath. By the time they had reacted, they had already arrived empty-handed. Luo Tongtian said in a low voice, "Last time, those freelance martial artists were driven by Luo Ting's plan and rushed to the human countries. They were intercepted and killed at the dispersed praying mountain. This time, did our people pass through unhindered? It was unhindered, not even a fly. Head Dao warrior, for sure, the people intercepted at the dispersed praying mountain were Qin Wushuang's group. Now, Since he had taken care of the aftermath, of course he would not ambush us at the dispersed praying mountain. Besides, he must have expected that the elite warriors we sent this time would not be people he could stop. This kid is extremely cunning. Luo Tongtian suppressed the anger inside his heart and said with an extremely complicated tone, Qin Wushuang, Qin Wushuang. I've said it before, I'll definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death. Mingshan, when the second Dao warrior returns from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, everything will become clear. Just wait. Luo Tongtian had sent Luo Henji, the second Dao warrior, to visit the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect. To put it bluntly, he was colluding with these two first-tier powerhouses and preparing to join the ranks to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Luo Tongtian knew better than anyone that for sure these two powerhouses wished for the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect to join. After all, in these 1,000 years of conflict, although these two powerhouses held the upper hand, they could not destroy the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Now, with a major powerhouse like the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect taking the initiative to join, what reason would they have to refuse? Since they had no reason to refuse, then what reason would they have to refuse if Luo Tongtian wanted to borrow something from them? Head Dao warrior, perhaps these two powerhouses will let us join the group to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. However, they should not be so idle as to help us deal with Qin Wushuang, a figure from the human countries, right? Tian Mingshan appeared somewhat lacking in confidence. Luo Tongtian said with a cold sneer, Mingshan, although Qin Wushuang is from the human countries, he has already revealed his talent. With his rapid rise, I am afraid those two powerhouses would not wish to see a great calamity grow under their eyes, right? Even if they do not interfere, could it be that the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect cannot deal with a human kid? I don't need them to do it themselves. As long as the Heavenly Punishing Villa is willing to lend their Heavenly Punishing Hawk to us, with the little human countries, even if they hide underground, the Heavenly Punishing Hawk can find them. The divine eye of the Heavenly Punishing Hawk is not ordinary. The Heavenly Punishing Hawk was the guardian spiritual beast of the Heavenly Punishing Villa. Although it had not entered the Supreme Tao stage, it was a spiritual beast at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Plus, the Heavenly Punishing Hawk possessed the bloodline of an ancient spiritual beast. Although its bloodline might not be comparable to Bao Bao's immemorial spiritual monkey bloodline, it was still extraordinary. Although this beast was at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage, no one would doubt that sooner or later this Heavenly Punishing Hawk would enter the Supreme Tao stage. As soon as Tian Mingshan heard the name of the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, he was overjoyed. Head Dao warrior, if we can borrow the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, that little matter in the human countries would be as easy as turning one's hand. For sure, we can pull out all 3 generations of Qin Wushuang from the dark. A trace of a cold sneer emerged from the corner of Luo Tongtian's mouth. I think it will take some time for Second to return from there. Currently, the plan is to capture Qin Wushuang, the main culprit, and bring him to justice. Mingshan, fellow Taoists, you will continue to be in charge. I will go meet that old friend. When Luo Tongtian said here, his tone was filled with a form of eerie. Clearly, the old friend he was referring to was Lu Xianlu, his old enemy. Luo Tongtian knew that the observant finger jade plate in Lu Xianlu's possession was the key to whether he could capture Qin Wushuang. Although the Heavenly Punishing Hawk could help him capture this Qin Wushuang, Luo Tongtian knew clearly that even if he was willing to lend the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, it would not come this quickly. With a delay, by the time he could borrow the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, perhaps Qin Wushuang would have already escaped to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Regardless of how strong his Heavenly Luo Daoist sect was, they did not have the skill to chase and kill Qin Wushuang at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 527. As long as he had, that observant finger jade plate, Luo Tongtian would have absolute assurance to dig out Qin Wushuang from within the Xianyuan mound. Time was running out, and Luo Tongtian did not want to delay. After all, if he delayed for another 15 minutes, it would give Qin Wushuang another 15 minutes of time to escape. He must acquire that observant finger jade plate as soon as possible. Or else, it would mean that the possibility of Qin Wushuang entering the Heavenly Emperor Mountain would increase. After the assignment, just as Luo Tongtian was about to dismiss everyone, suddenly, a wave of information came from the communication jade plate. It was an urgent message sent by an elder through his spiritual perception. Head Dao warrior, urgent information. Someone saw Murong Su appear at the Full Moon Prefecture. Full Moon Prefecture? The head Dao warrior was stunned. That Full Moon Prefecture was not far from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. One could almost say that it was the only way to enter the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Why did she go to that Full Moon Prefecture? When talking about this, Murong Su, head Dao warrior Luo Tongtian also had a belly full of anger. If it weren't for this Murong Su, Luo Ting would not have taken it to heart. He would not have left the heavenly Luo Taoist sect to find trouble with Qin Wushuang. Since ancient times, people had always said that beautiful women were the source of trouble. Now Luo Tongtian had experienced it deeply. That elder said, "I don't know what she wants to do. She keeps her whereabouts a secret. It seems that she is afraid of being discovered." With a gloomy expression, Luo Tongtian instructed, "Regardless of what she wants to do, monitor her movements closely. Report to me at any time." After a long journey, Qin Wushuang finally entered the territory of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Currently, the heavenly Luo Taoist sect had entered a frenzied state to hunt him down. Across the entire Xianyuan Mound, almost all elite warriors of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect had moved out. All kinds of bounties had also increased. However, no one expected that Qin Wushuang had already arrived at the headquarters of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Along the way, he had passed through countless prefectures. After trekking for almost 3 months, he had finally entered the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Lu Xinluo's map was a part of the terrain of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. For the past few months, Qin Wushuang had been studying the map in addition to cultivating. One day, in the territory of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture, Qin Wushuang stood beside a flowing river and said, "This river should be the Flowing Cloud River, right?" The Flowing Cloud River was clearly marked on the map, and the Flowing Cloud River flowed eastward. Qin Wushuang and the others followed the Flowing Cloud River and soon found the second location on the map. This location was called Lion King's Ridge. It was the most dangerous and desolate area in the entire Divine Brilliance Prefecture. There were very few people living within 1,000 miles of it. "Boss, just what does that Mr. Lu Xianlu want to tell us through this map?" Bao asked with confusion. Qin Wushuang said, "Mr. Lu Xianlu doesn't seem to be the kind of person who does things without rhyme or reason. Since he secretly gave me the map, he must have his own plans." From the conversation between him and that kid from the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, Lu Xianlu and the heavenly Luo Taoist sect should share an irreconcilable hatred. "Boss, that Lu Xianlu seems to know about your identity. He already knows, he just didn't expose me." Qin Wushuang recalled the situation at that time. That Lu Xianlu's implied meaning was obvious. Only, everyone was smart and did not expose each other. "Look, this is the Lion King's Ridge. This place is only a few thousand miles away from the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. If we follow this Lion King's Ridge, we should arrive at the Dark Wind Valley." There were many important locations marked on this map. However, this Dark Wind Valley was the most prominent and eye-catching one. Qin Wushuang guessed that this Dark Wind Valley should be the place Lu Xianlu wanted him to find through the map. Although it was only 2,000 or 3,000 miles to reach the Dark Wind Valley from the Lion King's Ridge, they must pass through the entire Lion King's Ridge. Thus, it appeared extremely dangerous. Along the way, Qin Wushuang did not dare to let down his guard. He did not want to disturb those spiritual beasts that were hibernating at the Lion King's Ridge. This Lion King's Ridge was a dangerous place where spiritual beasts roamed. Usually, disciples of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect would come to this Lion King's Ridge to train if they needed to. Thus, to the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, this Lion King's Ridge was an extremely important location. Along the way, Qin Wushuang flew out of the Lion King's Ridge and arrived at the dark wind valley that was shrouded in black fog. Since this dark wind valley was connected to the Lion King's Ridge, in fact, it was the continuation of the Lion King's Ridge. It was also an extremely dangerous place. Throughout the year, this dark wind valley was shrouded in black fog. When Qin Wushuang looked down from the sky, he could only see the dense fog and could not see the details of the dark wind valley. He could only feel the general outline of the dark wind valley. Indeed, this dark wind valley was a dangerous place. Also, it was extremely vast, and he could not see the end of it. It seems that the place Mr. Lu Xianlu had found is not ordinary. Let's fly a little lower and see what kind of scenery this dark wind valley has. As Qin Wushuang spoke, he lowered his wings and descended above the dark wind valley. However, Bao Bao laughed. "Boss, could it be you can't see the scenery inside the dark wind valley? You can see it?" Qin Wushuang was surprised. Bao Bao's eyes lit up. Like a burning torch, waves of strange red lights emerged from his pupils. This red light seemed to possess a strong penetrating power as it shot out directly. In fact, he was able to see the scene of the dark wind valley clearly. Bao Bao said, "Boss, I can feel it clearly. Lone, can you see it? My vision is blurry. How could I see anything? There are only layers of smoke." Bao Bao was somewhat surprised. "Boss, I can really see it." When Qin Wushuang saw the strange lights flashing in Bao Bao's eyes, he did not find it strange. Instead, he said, "Bao Bao, what stage have you practiced the pupil attachment technique to?" As soon as Bao Bao heard the words pupil attachment technique, suddenly he understood something. He slapped his thigh and said, "Boss, I remember now. When I was practicing the pupil attachment technique under the wild flame cliff, each time I felt my vision became clearer and more detailed. And there seemed to be two strange, flaming lights flashing in my eyes. Could it be the divine perception stage of the pupil attachment technique?" The first few realms of the pupil attachment technique were just simple methods of attaching eyes. As the realms got higher and higher, the pupil attachment technique would open the eye of gods, allowing the cultivator to reach an even more perverse level in their eye of gods technique. And for an extremely heaven-defying beast like Bao Bao, he had used the unique terrain of the wild flame cliff to practice the divine fire eyes. The power of this divine fire eyes was extraordinary. Not only could he see 1,000 miles away, he could also see through the darkness as if it was daytime. He could see through the water surface to the riverbed and through the walls to see the other side. Naturally, he could easily see through this disgusting technique to see the situation inside the dark wind valley. At the same time, while practicing the pupil attachment technique, Lone Stage was much lower than Bao Bao's. Naturally, this was related to his bloodline. More importantly, this pupil attachment technique was extremely compatible with Bao Bao's own conditions. Thus, he could achieve such a heaven-defying effect in a short time. Qin Wushuang was extremely gratified as he said to Bao Bao, "Bao Bao, is your vision not affected at all?" "Boss, in terms of vision compared to the outside, for sure there is a difference. However, I can truly see through this dark wind valley." "Okay, Bao Bao, then you will be in charge of leading the way." Qin Wushuang was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. For this dark wind valley, he had an intuition that this place was definitely not ordinary. It concealed an extremely important secret. Perhaps this secret was a disguised form of entrustment from Lu Xianlu. Bao Bao took the lead and led Qin Wushuang to descend into the dark wind valley. Before they had taken a few steps, suddenly, a wave of fishy wind blew over from the side. Next, a giant tongue spat out a wave of pungent stench and coiled around Qin Wushuang's waist. A giant strip-shaped spiritual beast that seemed to be a giant spiritual snake or a lizard-type monster spat out saliva from its mouth and charged over from the sky. Qin Wushuang had always been on high alert. Now, with the fishy wind opening the way, how could Qin Wushuang suffer any losses? He waved the hegemon breaking formation spear and spun out a giant arc to protect his body within a safe area. He raised his other hand and shot out 5 or 6 gang swords from the coagulated sword technique. Poo! With continuous poo-poo sounds, it emitted a muffled collision sound as if arrows had hit leather. Each of Qin Wushuang's gang swords hit the body of that monster. Although the body of that monster was huge, its movements were not stiff. It shook its head a few times and blocked all the power of this gang swords with its powerful body. Despite the ferocious power of that gang swords, it could only scratch the skin of this monster. It was apparent how terrifying the defense of this monster's skin was. After being scratched by Qin Wushuang's gang swords, that monster's ferocious nature was stimulated. It roared towards the sky and opened its bloody mouth. With a hissing sound, a wave of black air spurted out like a poisonous fog towards Qin Wushuang. At such a close distance, of course, Qin Wushuang saw it clearly. He immediately flapped his wings and dodged the spurting black air. That monster roared towards the sky and stood upright. When it stood upright, instantly, Qin Wushuang felt a wave of coldness. This monster's body was indeed huge. It was as tall as a 5-story building in his previous life. Although it was called a huge python, it had obvious limbs. Although it was called a lizard, it had a ferocity that even a lizard could not compare to. The monster roared towards the sky and opened its mouth, revealing 2 rows of razor-sharp teeth. As it opened and closed its mouth, more than 10 rays of sword qi shot out from both sides of its teeth. They formed a crisscrossing attack that cut towards Qin Wushuang like a pair of scissors. Qin Wushuang secretly praised this beast. He did not dare to be careless. His wings shot up again, and he flew into the air. For a moment, he did not dare to dive down rashly. He realized that this monster might be even harder to deal with than Luo Zhan. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.qijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 528. This monster's ability to resist attacks was extremely abnormal. Qin Wushuang had hit it with the coagulated sword a few times, but it could only cause some minor injuries. Such abnormal defensive power was many times more terrifying than Luo Zhan's. Qin Wushuang floated in midair and looked at this monster in astonishment. At this moment, he could clearly see that it had a thick waist, a huge head, and a row of saw-like sharp objects on its back. Lone was originally a ferocious-looking spirit beast, but compared to this monster, Lone had no choice but to admit defeat. However, although this monster's defensive power was astonishing, it was still at a disadvantage in terms of movement speed, especially when facing Qin Wushuang, who possessed the purple cloud yin-yang wings. This monster could only fully utilize its defensive power. As for its defensive power, it could not even utilize 30% of its power. This battle was similar to the battle with Luo Zhan. This monster had become Qin Wushuang's training target. Qin Wushuang used all kinds of techniques on this monster, and they were all utilized perfectly. This kind of battle had an obvious effect on Qin Wushuang. First of all, it allowed Qin Wushuang to combine his own combat characteristics with the purple cloud yin-yang wings, which allowed his combat power to obtain a miraculous enhancement. This enhancement allowed him to be at ease when facing an elite warrior of the profound Void Martial stage. For a warrior of the refined Void Martial stage, it was unimaginable to confront an elite warrior of the profound Void Martial stage head-on. However, Qin Wushuang relied on the advantage of the purple cloud yin-yang wings to forcefully turn the impossible into possible. And now, Qin Wushuang obviously had the intention to train his overall combat power. He tried his best to use the graceful spiritual bow less, or not to use it to get rid of his dependence on the graceful spiritual bow. Of course, this was not because Qin Wushuang was being pretentious. He wanted to use the graceful spiritual bow less, so that he could maximize the power of the graceful spiritual bow during crucial moments and develop his own potential to the greatest extent. If Qin Wushuang had to use the graceful spiritual bow in every battle, it would certainly restrict his overall fighting ability. This was definitely not something that Qin Wushuang was willing to face. Therefore, ever since he had killed Luo Ting, Qin Wushuang had started to take the initiative to battle. It was obvious that he had the intention to increase his own battle power and not bet all of his trump cards on the graceful spiritual bow and those sealed spiritual beasts. Although those spirit beasts were very useful, there was no doubt that they were only helpers in the end. On the path of martial arts cultivation, one's own strength was the main theme. Qin Wushuang was immersed in the enjoyment of this battle. At this moment, he felt that he was only facing an expert at the voiding realm, not a powerful spirit beast. The purple cloud yin-yang wings sped through the air. Everywhere it went, there was a bright white light, forming beautiful arcs in the black fog. The more the monster fought, the more sullen it felt. It kept roaring madly and clearly. It was extremely dissatisfied with Qin Wushuang's shameless tactics. It was not that this monster could not fly, but its fat body was destined to be unsuitable for fighting in the air. It would be even more disadvantageous if it were to fight in the air by force. Bao Bao was also observing this monster. With Bao Bao's nimble movements, it would be difficult for this monster to do anything to Bao Bao. At this moment, Qin Wushuang did not want to summon those 5 sealed spiritual beasts. He only chose to move around and observe each movement of this monster. The unique characteristic of this monster was that it did not evade ordinary attacks. Unless Qin Wushuang was attacking its vital areas such as its eyes and forehead, it would evade slightly and use other body parts to block Qin Wushuang's attacks. When facing such tyrannical defense, Qin Wushuang also knew that it was impossible to hurt this monster with ordinary attacks. Regarding the level of defense of this monster, it had completely surpassed the level of the profound void martial stage. Bao Bao also cried out, "Boss, most likely this monster has reached the perfect stage. Ordinary elemental attacks will not hurt it." Apparently, that monster understood their conversation. With a loud roar, its body suddenly started to spin at a rapid speed. Suddenly, its 2 front claws pressed down on the ground. As they pressed down, 2 golden rays of light shot out from their palms. These rays of light spread out in an instant. These rays of light were golden in color, as if they had circular patterns that rippled with dazzling elemental colors. Suddenly, Bao Bao's pupils searched. "Boss, be careful. This is the Earth Elemental Technique, Great Earth Gravity." Although this yellow light had not rushed to Qin Wushuang's feet vividly, Qin Wushuang felt an extremely powerful gravitational force pulling his feet down rhythmically. Surprised, Qin Wushuang flapped his wings and rushed to the sky. That monster gave an evil grin and grabbed with its palms. That golden light was congealed into 2 sharp claws and directly grabbed towards the clouds. When Qin Wushuang saw these 2 golden claws coming at him ferociously, how could he dare to be careless? He did not take it head-on. Once again, he flew out diagonally with his wings and evaded this violent attack. When that monster saw that Qin Wushuang was unmoved by force, it was enraged. It went berserk on the ground, and its body shook rapidly. Both of its claws kept grabbing at the air. Each grab carried waves of powerful gravitational force. As long as Qin Wushuang was caught by one of them, it was equivalent to being pulled by an earth elemental rope. Certainly, it would be difficult for him to maintain his balance. In the worst case, he might even fall down. Fortunately, the purple cloud yin-yang wings played a huge role at this time. Regardless of how fast that monster's movements were, Qin Wushuang did not hesitate and continued to rush to the sky. As he rose higher and higher into the air, the monster's attack naturally decreased. Qin Wushuang had almost reached the clouds. Panting heavily, he looked at that crazy monster below. That monster glared at Qin Wushuang with a pair of bell-like eyes, and kept roaring as it glared angrily at him. Apparently, this monster was also helpless and angry at Qin Wushuang's tactics. However, it also knew that it was unrealistic to let this human fight it head-on. No one could subdue the other. This caused the situation to enter a stalemate. Bao Bao scuttled to a big tree far away and observed this monster. He communicated with beast language. Wugu la, ha cha and I bo wa. Chun see you in air. That monster was stunned and then whispered a few words. In the middle of the air, Qin Wushuang immediately pricked up his ears to listen when he heard them talking in beast language. When Bao Bao saw that the monster responded, he immediately said, "Big guy, we are just passing by and do not have any evil intentions. Are you the master of this dark wind valley?" Apparently, that monster said with a somewhat displeased tone, "You little monkey, how come you are with a human? This dark wind valley is gigantic, but the surrounding few hundred miles is my territory. This human kid dared to trespass into my territory. I must swallow his primordial spirit." Bao Bao laughed. "Big guy, the human is my boss. He is very friendly to the beast clan. Also, he did not come here with evil intentions. Besides, he is not afraid of you if you want to fight. My boss still has a lot of trump cards that he has not used." That monster kept mumbling, "He has trump cards. Do you think I don't have trump cards?" As Qin Wushuang listened to their argument, he also said in beast language, "Big guy, it's our fault for trespassing into your territory. We can apologize to you. However, if you want to fight, we will accompany you at any time. If we keep fighting like this, I don't know when it will end. Why don't we set a time to fight again?" Qin Wushuang did not want to keep tangling with this giant monster. If he kept fighting like this, he would not have any chance of winning. Even if he used the graceful spiritual bow, if the other party possessed the defensive power of the perfect void martial stage, most likely it would be difficult to kill such a giant monster, unless he increased his strength to the transformation void martial stage. Crossing 2 levels was the limit of the graceful spiritual bow's attack. Although that monster had a big head, he was not brainless. When he saw that this human did not show much hostility, he felt more or less relieved. However, he still hesitated. "Little monkey, is this human really not those martial artists of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture?" Bao Bao laughed. "Our boss is a disciple of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. He is not related to the Divine Brilliance Prefecture." That giant monster said angrily, "Little monkey, don't lie to me. Martial artists of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect often come here to train." "Heavenly Luo Taoist sect?" Bao Bao laughed. "Are you that scared of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect?" That giant monster said, "Of course I am not scared of those little minions of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. However, they have 2 elite warriors at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Even I cannot take it." The words of this monster were rather honest. Bao Bao said with a grin, "Don't worry, we are not related to the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. On the contrary, we are the enemies of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect." Enemies? Suddenly, that giant monster was stunned. Strange colors flashed in his pair of big eyes. He could not help but size up Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao and said with an extremely surprised tone, Are you guys related to Mr. Liu Xianlu?" Bao Bao was shocked. "Big guy, you know Mr. Liu Xianlu?" That monster said with a face full of vigilance, "You guys go first." Bao Bao laughed and waved his hand to show that he did not have any ill intentions. He said with a chuckle, "Big guy, we share a good relationship with Mr. Liu Xianlu. In fact, he sent us here." When that monster heard these words, he revealed an ecstatic expression. He looked at Qin Wushuang, then looked at Bao Bao. "You are not lying to me? Do you have proof?" Qin Wushuang flashed that map and held that observant finger jade plate in his hand. "This is the proof." When that monster saw the map and the observant finger jade plate, he was overjoyed. He kept nodding with his giant head. "Indeed. Ha. You were sent by Mr. Liu Xianlu? That's great, that's great." The tone of this monster was filled with ecstasy. Bao Bao asked strangely, "Big guy, you also know Mr. Liu Xianlu?" That giant monster said with a rare, sincere tone. Senior Lu Xianlu is my benefactor. He sent me to guard the Dark Wind Valley and not let any freelance martial artist pass through here, unless the person he sent arrives. Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao exchanged a glance and dropped to the ground. They stood together. Lone also followed them. When he saw this giant monster, he also clicked his tongue in wonder. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 529. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. After the two sides pulled out Lu Xianlu's layer of relationship, they immediately turned from enemies to friends. It turned out that this monster was called the saber-toothed, profound yellow dragon. It was also a variant of the ancient dragon clan. Its appearance also had some of the characteristics of the dragon clan. This saber-toothed covert yellow dragon had been born and raised in this Dark Wind Valley. One day, coincidentally, during the heavenly Luo Daoist sect's once-in-30 years major ordeal, the saber-toothed covert yellow dragon was caught by Luo Henji, the second Dao warrior of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. He wanted to forcefully turn him into a contract beast. Naturally, the saber-toothed covered yellow dragon would rather die than submit. Just as they were in a stalemate, Lu Xianlu appeared out of nowhere, hid his identity, and ambushed Luo Henji. He injured Luo Henji and saved the saber-tooth cover yellow dragon's life. The saber-tooth cover yellow dragon had always been very wary of humans, but Lu Xianlu had given it a very good impression. In addition, Lu Xianlu had saved its life, so the saber-tooth cover yellow dragon decided to repay Lu Xianlu. It took the initiative to become Lu Xianlu's contractual spiritual beast, but Lu Xianlu did not do so. Instead, he asked the saber-tooth cover yellow dragon to guard the Black Wind Valley. He absolutely could not allow any rogue cultivator to enter the Black Wind Valley. If the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was going to train at the Dark Wind Valley, he must stop them within his power. In general, he must not allow large groups of martial artists to enter the Dark Wind Valley. The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon knew very well that it would be impossible for it to complete such an important task on its own. Therefore, it made full use of its position in Black Wind Valley and forcefully recruited many spiritual beasts to serve it. The Black Wind Valley spanned tens of thousands of miles, and the saber-toothed subterranean yellow dragon only controlled a few hundred miles of land. However, the beasts in the Black Wind Valley were very united. The saber-toothed mystic yellow dragon continued to run around, convincing more and more spirit beasts to join in and protect the Black Wind Valley spirit beast world from being invaded. Over time, as the saber-toothed covert yellow dragon's strength continued to increase, its rallying power in Black Wind Valley grew stronger and stronger. In the past 100 years, Black Wind Valley had indeed become a forbidden area for human cultivators. Even for the trials of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, they would not dare to enter the Dark Wind Valley easily. They only dared to conduct the trials near the Lion King's Ridge. For the entire heavenly Luo Daoist sect, unless Luo Tontian, the head Dao warrior, stepped out, it would be impossible to penetrate the Dark Wind Valley. Luo Tontian was not a fool. It was not worth it to offend the Black Wind Valley's spiritual beast lair for such a small conflict. Hence, his strategy was to endure for the time being. After he entered the Supreme Divine Tao, he would slowly look for this batch of spirit beasts to settle accounts. At the Divine Brilliance Prefecture, Luo Tontian would never allow any powerhouses that could threaten the survival of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, not even the spiritual beasts. What he needed was absolute authority. He would purge Black Wind Valley sooner or later. However, now was not the time. Luo Tontian didn't know that inside the Dark Wind Valley, a scheme targeting his heavenly Luo Daoist sect was also slowly being prepared. At this Dark Wind Valley, Lu Xianlu had already buried the seed of hatred to crush the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. He only needed to wait for the right time to reap the results. That's right, little monkey. I can see that there's an extremely powerful hidden aura on your body. Could you be a descendant of the primal god race? Although this saber-toothed covert yellow dragon was not a descendant of the primal god race, he did possess the inheritance of the dragon clan. In the immemorial era, there were also dragon clans. However, not all of the dragon clans were of the primal dragon clan. Thus, the bloodline of the dragon clan did not necessarily mean one had the bloodline of the primal divine dragon. Of course, possessing the bloodline of the dragon clan was an extremely glorious thing. To a certain extent, the bloodline of the dragon clan was not inferior to the bloodline of the divine race. Firstly, the saber-toothed covert yellow dragon had demonstrated his monstrous defensive power. Qin Wushuang's various attacks could only scratch his skin. He could not even hurt his flesh. Looking at the defensive power of this saber-toothed covert yellow dragon, if Qin Wushuang did not use the graceful spiritual bow, most likely he would need to reach the profound void martial stage to injure the saber-toothed covert yellow dragon with normal attacks. Bao Bao loved it when people complimented his bloodline. With a trace of pride on his face, he laughed. "Big guy, I have the bloodline of the primal spiritual monkey. I'm not even 10 years old, haha." Each time Bao Bao spoke of his age, the other party would react with extreme shock. This saber-toothed covert yellow dragon was no exception. He looked at Bao Bao with surprise and shifted his gaze to Qin Wushuang. To Bao Bao, who was also of the Beast Clan, he held him in high esteem. "You human, you are also somewhat interesting. You know the beast language and speak it fluently. However, your attack power is somewhat lacking. If you didn't have that monstrous pair of wings, I could have killed you in one move." The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon did not know the meaning of modesty. Although Qin Wushuang had won some of his respect, he would not hide his thoughts because of this. Qin Wushuang knew that the other party was speaking the truth. He was not angry as he laughed. "Big guy, if my attack power could injure you, today you would not have the chance to talk and laugh with us." He was not bragging. If Qin Wushuang was at the profound void martial stage, then even if he did not use the graceful spiritual bow, he could still kill this saber-toothed covert yellow dragon with normal attacks. Stunned, the saber-toothed covert yellow dragon looked at Qin Wushuang and could not help but laugh. "Human kid, you are arrogant. However, I admit that you are speaking the truth. Your pair of wings is too monstrous." After he had finished speaking, everyone laughed. After a pause, Qin Wushuang suddenly asked again, "By the way, Mr. Lu Xianlu asked you to guard this place. In the end, what secrets are hidden here? He only gave me a map and did not tell me anything else." "Nothing?" The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon was somewhat surprised. "Where is Mr. Lu himself?" Immediately, Qin Wushuang explained Lu Xianlu's situation. The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon kept nodding as he listened. He gritted his teeth and said, "It's that heavenly Luo Taoist sect again, this giant tumor of the divine brilliance prefecture." These words had struck the bottom of Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao's heart. Especially Bao Bao, he smiled and said, "Isn't that right? If this tumor is not taken out, many people would not be able to live a peaceful life. Old Dragon, my boss is the sworn enemy of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect." Bao Bao was the type of person who would become familiar with anyone. Regardless of who it was, as long as he spoke a few words, he would become familiar with them. You see, he was already addressing the other party as Old Dragon naturally. Do not underestimate this title. This way, unconsciously, it had pulled the relationship between each other closer. Little by little, it had removed the initial estrangement. Haha. Going against the heavenly Luo Taoist sect? The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon looked at Qin Wushuang and his friends with some doubts. "Although I admire your courage, I must say that with your current strength, you are still far from enough. For the title of sworn enemy, perhaps Mr. Lu is more suitable, right?" What he meant was that their strength was still a bit lacking. This saber-toothed covert yellow dragon was straightforward and did not know how to beat around the bush. Qin Wushuang gave a free and easy smile and did not mind. However, Bao Bao said, "Old Dragon, it seems you are still looking down on us? Not to mention the others. At least half of those elite warriors of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect have been mobilized by us. Currently, across the entire Xianyuan mound, where is the information about my boss? But what about it? We are still living happily and killing a few elite warriors of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect to relieve our boredom. The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon looked at them with disbelief. Recently, the heavenly Luo Taoist sect has been in a state of chaos. They seem to be on the move. Could it be they're chasing after you guys? Of course. Do you think they are out to relieve their boredom? Bao Bao laughed, and his tone was full of pride. With their current strength, it was already incredible to be able to toy with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect to this extent. At least, even Luo Tontian, the head Tao warrior of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, could not sit still. The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon mumbled, "This way, Mr. Lu Xianlu had sent you guys here with some reason." Bao Bao took the opportunity to ask, "Old dragon, in the end, what kind of medicine is Lu Xianlu selling in his gourd? You can't let us come here for nothing, right?" The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon remained tight-lipped and did not speak. Instead, he said, "Since Mr. Lu Xianlu did not speak clearly, I will not speak clearly either. Since you guys have the map, you will rely on your own comprehension. I will only tell you that if you truly want to deal with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, this Dark Wind Valley is extremely important to you guys." When Qin Wushuang saw this saber-toothed covert yellow dragon keeping them in suspense, he did not ask and laughed leisurely. "Bao Bao, don't make things difficult for Brother Dragon. I'm only worried that Luo Tontian will deal with Mr. Lu himself. It will be extremely troublesome for him." The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon revealed a gloomy expression. "Because of Mr. Lu, you guys are still willing to drag out an ignoble existence? If it weren't for dealing with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, he would have already committed suicide for his beloved girl. Besides, Mr. Lu's primordial spirit was damaged. All this time, he had been holding on by force to live until now. He had been preparing for the final battle with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect for a long time. Only, he had not found reliable people to start his plan. Plan? Qin Wushuang frowned slightly. Yes, a plan. This plan has been around for hundreds of years. This Dark Wind Valley is the core area of Mr. Lu's plan. The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon said with an incomparably deep tone. And you guys, although you do not know Mr. Lu, you should be the candidates chosen by him. You should be the people he thinks are reliable. But we have only just met Mr. Lu. From Bao Bao's tone, it was clear that he felt this fact was somewhat absurd. Mr. Lu is an elite warrior at the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage. Plus, he has a unique way of judging people. For the things you guys do not understand, he knows much more than you. Don't look at how Mr. Lu appears to be unreliable. In fact, he knows better than anyone. Only, while he understands you guys, you may not understand him. I am sure that if you have been opposing the heavenly Luo Taoist sect at the Xianyuan Mound, he must have known your identity. Or else, he would not have acted so recklessly. This series of accidents made Qin Wushuang feel incredibly incredulous. Inwardly, he was even more curious about the Dark Wind Valley. In the end, what kind of plan had this Mr. Lu set up in the Dark Wind Valley? Without a doubt, Mr. Lu was a clever person. Or else, this swift and fierce saber-toothed covert yellow dragon would never have willingly worked for him. When he thought here, Qin Wushuang suddenly gained a lot of confidence. He only felt that Lu Xianlu's seemingly muddy eyes contained endless wisdom. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.qijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 530. Qin Wushuang's confidence had multiplied. He had a premonition that since Mr. Lu Xianlu had prepared for almost 100 years, this plan must be perfect. Even if it was not enough to uproot the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, it would be enough to strike a great blow to them. To strike a blow to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, This was Qin Wushuang's great ambition. After all, ever since Qin Wushuang had entered the Xian Yuan Mound, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had stuck to him like a dogskin plaster. It had made Qin Wushuang feel a constant pressure. Of course, to Qin Wushuang, this was not entirely a bad thing. At least, all of this could spur him to work hard and not slack off for a moment. Since that saber-toothed covert yellow dragon was unwilling to speak the truth, Qin Wushuang and his friends could only explore on their own. However, Qin Wushuang was not depressed. Since he knew that Mr. Lu Xianlu had set up a plan here, he had the confidence to carry out this plan on behalf of Lu Xianlu. Following the map, Qin Wushuang started to explore the Dark Wind Valley again. Although this Dark Wind Valley had a perimeter of 10,000 miles, it was not small either. It was not easy to find the location of the mechanisms set up by Lu Xianlu. However, Qin Wushuang was extremely patient as he kept exploring in the Dark Wind Valley. Although that saber-toothed covert yellow dragon did not assist Qin Wushuang, he did not set up any obstructions deliberately. However, none of this could baffle Qin Wushuang. In terms of finding mechanisms, Qin Wushuang had sufficient experience and talent. Just like how he had found the fourth circle of the seven deadly arrays formation at the Tortoise King Mountain. After a few days of exploration, he had successfully locked onto the location of the mechanisms. Through different methods, he had successfully found the entrance to the mechanisms set up by Lu Xianlu. This was an underground abyss entrance to the Dark Wind Valley that was not easily discovered. After Qin Wushuang had found the entrance, he followed the instructions on the map and finally entered this abyss entrance. Under the exploration of the underground experts like Mole and Jade Hair, Qin Wushuang had easily entered the abyss. After walking through a long tunnel, he arrived before a huge door. This door also had a hidden mechanism that could only be opened with a special method. Fortunately, this method of opening was vaguely recorded on the back of the map. Qin Wushuang's perception was very high, and he quickly opened the door. Once it was opened, there was indeed a completely different world inside. It could be seen that Lu Xianlu had indeed spent a lot of effort in this underground abyss. Pushing open the door, he saw a space that was not very spacious. This space went down level by level, and with each level, the space became more spacious. However, there was nothing on the upper 5 or 6 levels. There was only an empty space. When they reached the 7th floor, Qin Wushuang suddenly felt a different atmosphere. Around the 7th level, there was an extremely moist and cold earth qi. Moreover, the earth attribute ripples on the 7th level were extremely powerful. Each time Qin Wushuang took a step, he could feel a wave of powerful ripples that affected his steps. Finally, Qin Wushuang pushed open the door to the 7th level. When he pushed the door and went in, instantly, the inside became clear and bright. What entered Qin Wushuang's eyes was a giant space the size of a palace. Inside this space, different shelves were arranged. Above the shelves, different books and playthings were arranged. With one look, one would feel that the furnishings in this space were extraordinary. Qin Wushuang wandered under these shelves and looked around. There were a variety of books that covered everything. Indeed, it was the encyclopedia of the Tianxian land. Qin Wushuang flipped for a while and was not very interested in these books. Boss, could it be that Mr. Lu Xianlu wants to use these broken books to deal with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect? Bao did not know whether to laugh or cry. I really cannot see how these broken books can deal with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Lone did not have the slightest interest in these books. When he saw the bookshelves, he ignored them and quickly searched through this giant space. After he walked around, suddenly Lone said, "Boss, come and look over here." There were few traces of surprise in Lone's tone. Qin Wushuang walked over when he heard his voice. In the direction Lone had pointed, a pair of statues were displayed in a high corner. For these two statues, one was Lu Xianlu himself, and the other was a woman. Qin Wushuang had seen a similar jade statue at Lu Xianlu's place. Before that statue, Qin Wushuang looked for a moment and gave a long sigh. Mr. Lu is such a person with deep feelings. It seems that this beautiful senior should be Mr. Lu's confidant, right? Bao laughed. Mr. Lu is such a sentimental person. By the way, boss, look here. The direction Bao was pointing at was the wall that the statue was facing. And the hands of those two statues were making a hand gesture, intentionally or unintentionally. This hand gesture was pointing to the front with the index finger. Qin Wushuang followed the direction of this hand gesture. Suddenly, the two fingers on the statue shot out two waves of golden lights at the same time and hit the wall. When that wall was hit by the golden lights, instantly, it was as if a golden hanging curtain had dropped down from the sky and painted the entire wall into a golden color. Among that golden lights, one after another, tadpole-like black words emerged. Qin Wushuang was extremely surprised as he knew that this must be a trap set up by Lu Xianlu. The words written on that golden light were, "Those who have my map can see this place. Those who have my guidance, please bow 3 times before the statue." Qin Wushuang laughed. This Mr. Lu sure knows how to play tricks. Of course, Bao would not let Qin Wushuang bow. He walked before that statue with a chuckle. "Mr. Lu, and Mr. Lu's sweetheart, hello. I am Bao, let me bow to you guys." As he spoke, he bent his waist and bowed 3 times. Then he clapped his fingers and said with a chuckle, "Boss, now that I have bowed, let's see what instructions you have for the next step." Before Bao had finished speaking, suddenly the 5 fingers of that statue opened up and a dozen lightning-like lights shot out from the center of the palm. These rays of light hit the golden light one after another, forming a very ferocious monster head. Just as Qin Wushuang and his friends were stunned, again, waves of sharp lights shot out from the pupils of those 2 statues and hit the position of that malevolent head. Boom! When this power was concentrated at the position of that head, it instantly pierced through the wall. It splashed up the dust on the ground. Qin Wushuang could not help but sigh with emotion. Indeed, this Mr. Lu was a master of craftsmanship. He had designed such a breathtaking mechanism. After everything was done, those 2 statues regained their calmness and did not make any further movements. Qin Wushuang observed those statues carefully for a long time. Finally, he realized that Lu Xianlu did not control these statues with puppets. Instead, he used spiritual talismans and different kinds of ingenious external forces to achieve such a heaven-defying effect. Lu Xianlu was a master craftsman. Naturally, the spiritual talismans he made were beyond the reach of others. Since everything was made by Lu Xianlu, it was not strange at all. Sky-pilfered mole and Moon Palace Jade Hair followed the old rules and took the lead to pass through the cave where the head was. After a moment, they turned around. "Master, come in." Qin Wushuang, Bao, and Lone also followed them. Behind this wall was where the real essence of the place lay. If others had arrived at this 7th level and saw that this giant space was filled with all kinds of secret books and stories, all kinds of valuable decorations, crystal stones, spiritual talismans, pills, and weapons, most likely they would have been intoxicated. If that was the case, they would never have imagined that outside this 7th level, there was a sky beyond a sky. Qin Wushuang looked around this space. Although it was not as big as 1/4 of the space in the 7th level, the things placed here were also very few. However, each item here could be said to be the essence left behind by Lu Xianlu. Countless crystal stones dazzled Qin Wushuang's eyes, and all kinds of weapons also overwhelmed Qin Wushuang. Besides, there were some spiritual talismans placed in the corner. With one look at the material and shape, he knew that it was the essence of Lu Xianlu's lifetime work. Qin Wushuang's gaze was not attracted by all of this. Instead, his gaze stopped on a table that was enshrined with a memorial tablet. That table was extremely simple and unadorned. A memorial tablet was placed on top of it. However, there was not a single word written on it. Only a vivid and lifelike statue was engraved on top of it. Qin Wushuang knew that for sure. This was the place where Lu Xianlu held a memorial service for his beloved. Immediately, he walked before it respectfully and bowed. Then he said, "Senior, Qin Wushuang did not come here with the intention to offend you. If I have offended you, please forgive me." As Qin Wushuang spoke these words, suddenly he saw rows of fine words engraved on the stone platform behind the memorial tablet. "Those who enter this room can inherit my life's essence. You must also complete my dying wish." Getting straight to the point, Lu Xianlu had described the grudges between him and the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. It also described how Luo Tongtian had persecuted him. Although these words were not long, each word and sentence was filled with deep hatred. Apparently, Lu Xianlu had written it with tears of blood, as his words carried grief and anger. So, Mr. Lu and that Luo Tongtian had formed a grudge because of this girl. It seems that the heavenly Luo Taoist sect has a tradition of bullying men and tyrannizing women. Clearly, this girl was in love with Mr. Lu, yet Luo Tongtian had snatched her away. It's truly hateful. Qin Wushuang kept sighing and said seriously to that memorial tablet, "Mr. Lu, and this senior, I, Qin Wushuang, swear that in my entire life, as long as I have one breath left, I will never stop my grand ambition of destroying the heavenly Luo Taoist sect." There were no solemn promises, nor were there any boastful words. However, inwardly, Qin Wushuang knew better than anyone that to him, he had no other choice but to destroy the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. "Either you die, or I die." These words had clearly summarized the relationship between him and the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Following the guidance of Lu Xianlu's words on the stone platform, Qin Wushuang also had a preliminary understanding of the layout of this secret room. In this secret room, Lu Xianlu had left behind 6 major treasures, and those dazzling crystal stones were only additional gifts outside of the 6 major treasures. Qin Wushuang looked at the treasures around him. These were the essence of Lu Xianlu's lifetime collection. Of course, there was not a single thing that was just there to make up the numbers. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.qijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 531. For each of these 6 great treasures, Qin Wushuang felt a rush of excitement. Qin Wushuang looked at them one by one. The first one was called the Spiritual Power Pearl. This object was placed in a box and tied with a bracelet. At first glance, it appeared to be an ordinary ornament. However, after careful observation, as long as he communicated with this pearl, he would instantly feel a wave of powerful presence that would make one feel as if they were reborn. This presence even carried a trace of desolation from the ancient times. The Spiritual Power Origin Bead was a treasure passed down from the Antiquity Age. Although it was not a Divine Path item, anyone below the Divine Path who obtained this item could be reborn as long as they were supported by the Spiritual Power Origin Bead for a moment, no matter how much spiritual power was consumed or how much primordial spirit was exhausted. Of course, the prerequisite was that there must be no fatal injuries. If it was a fatal injury that could not be healed, after all, this Spiritual Power Pearl did not have the power to bring the dead back to life. To put it bluntly, this was an endless source of spiritual qi. Of course, this Spiritual Power Pearl did not have an endless source of spiritual qi. Instead, this Spiritual Power Pearl possessed an extremely powerful ability to summon spiritual qi. It had a form of imperceptible absorption of the spiritual qi from the surrounding environment. Through absorbing the spiritual qi from the surrounding environment, it would provide the owner with spiritual qi. In the end, it would act as a rapid bridge. For such an object, if it were to fall into the Xian Yuan Mound, even if those supreme Tao elite warriors would not put it in their eyes, ordinary martial artists would surely go crazy for it. Most likely, they would not hesitate to give up their lives for it. After all, with such a treasure, it meant that one would not need to worry about consumption in battle. For a long battle, it would be extremely beneficial. Of course, this Spiritual Power Pearl could only provide spiritual qi. After all, it would not allow a weak martial artist to defeat a martial artist of a much higher level. Thus, with this spiritual power pearl, it did not mean that one could sweep across the martial arts world. The second object made Qin Wushuang's heart beat faster. This object was the kind of pill that could instantly increase one's level. In the martial arts world, it was impossible to achieve any level easily. From each level to the next, it required a process of accumulation. For those with high talent, they would take a shorter time to climb to each level. It would be easier for them to comprehend and break through. For those martial artists with lower talent, they would take a longer time, and the process would be extremely difficult and dangerous. At a certain limit, they would never be able to increase their level. To obtain an instant increase in level without any effort, for such a matter, unless one was blessed by the heavens, it would have to go against the natural order. Usually, such actions would rely on the help of external objects. For example, it was possible to obtain a supreme elixir, or it was possible to obtain a spiritual fruit or elixir from the natural world, which could instantly increase one's cultivation base. Of course, the probability of such an occurrence rate. Among 100,000 martial artists, perhaps not one would have such fortuitous encounter. And this was a heaven defying the natural order. The heavens and the heavens, the heavens, the heavens, the heavens. By the heavens and heavens, by the heavens and the heavens. Heavens, the heavens is heavens. This pill belonged to the category of heaven defying. Qin Wushuang looked at this pill curiously and said with a smile, "That Mr. Liu is an elite alchemist?" Qin Wushuang laughed and remembered that he had also learned alchemy at the Stargaze Palace. Only, to Lu Xianlu, that level of alchemy was insignificant. Looking at this pill, it did not appear to be anything astonishing on the surface. However, similar to that spiritual power pearl, if one were to sense it carefully, one would be able to sense the essence within it. "Boss, since this pill can increase one's level unconditionally, why didn't Senior Lu Xianlu take it himself?" Qin Wushuang was also curious. However, outside the jade pot that contained this pill, a line of words had been carved and gave Qin Wushuang the answer. Initially, Lu Xianlu had reached the peak of the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage. Without the guidance of the Supreme Tao, he would never enter the Supreme Tao stage. In other words, he had already dug out the potential of his body to the extreme. Thus, to him, this pill would not be effective. In other words, this sky-pilfered pill would only be effective on martial artists who had not dug out their potential to the extreme. If it was used on martial artists who had reached a bottleneck and could not break through, it would be a meaningless waste. Additionally, besides Lu Xianlu's strength reaching the extreme, his own primordial spirit was severely damaged. Since he was relying on this pill to maintain his life, it was destined that he would never take this pill again. As Qin Wushuang sensed the powerful presence of this sky-pilfered pill, his heart throbbed. He thought that Senior Lu Xianlu was indeed a great person to have refined such a miraculous pill. Yet, he was able to control the temptation and did not take it. Instead, he left it here to wait for the destined person. Such foresight and breadth of mind were beyond the reach of ordinary people. The first two treasures had already made Qin Wushuang click his tongue in wonder. The third treasure was something like a seal. This object was not big and could be grasped with one hand. Qin Wushuang looked at the introduction, ground-tracking seal. Initially, this object had been refined from the bones of a 10,000-year-old earth attribute demonic beast. Not only did it possess a powerful earth attribute, it also possessed a powerful tracking power to those who used the earth escape technique to escape. As long as one was sealed by this ground-tracking seal, even if they had escaped to the ends of the earth, it would follow them like a maggot in the tarsal bone. It would never lose track of their whereabouts. Besides this nature-defying ability, this object also possessed a powerful gravitational force. When using this object, it could increase the gravity within 10 miles. As for how much it would increase, it would depend on the strength of the person who used this object. Even for a martial artist who had just entered the void martial stage, it would be enough to increase the gravity by 5 times. If a martial artist at the perfect void martial stage were to acquire this object, they could instantly increase the gravity by 20 times. To those elite warriors who used the high altitude to fight, what kind of impact would it be if the gravity suddenly increased by 20 times? Qin Wushuang had a deep impression of this. When he was fighting with that saber-tooth-covered yellow dragon, that dragon had only used some gravitational force to increase the gravity. Instantly, it had greatly restricted his movements in the air, and he had almost been dragged down. It could be said that if this object could be used well, it could unleash an unimaginable effect in actual combat. Indeed, Qin Wushuang was overjoyed at this unexpected turn of events. Even Bao Bao clicked his tongue in wonder. "Boss, this ground-tracking seal is so nature-defying. It seems Mr. Liu has hidden a lot of good things. Even if I am a powerful Earth attribute spiritual beast, it will be difficult to increase the gravity by 10 times instantly. And this divine skill consumes a lot of spiritual qi. Using the gravitational force technique can be said to be a technique that harms 1,000 and harms oneself 800. With this object, it will be much easier." Qin Wushuang had always been envious of the gravitational force technique. Now, when he saw this ground-tracking seal, of course, he was reluctant to part with it. However, after looking at the 3 treasures, he still did not take any of them. After he had finished looking at them, he returned them to their original places and did not move them lightly. The 4th treasure was not a medicinal pill, nor was it a weapon. Instead, it was a strangely shaped mask. This mask was called the Heart Illusion Mask. This mask could change its appearance according to its owner's preferences. Compared to the mask Qin Wushuang was using now, this mask was much more superior. One mask could change into an unlimited number of illusions. Besides a top craftsman like Lu Xianlu, there would not be more than 10 craftsmen in the entire Xianyuan Mound who could do it. Although this mask did not appear as dazzling and enticing as the previous 3, to Qin Wushuang's current situation, it was extremely important. Qin Wushuang put down this mask and walked to the 5th treasure. The 5th treasure was 5 talismans that were placed in a box. These 5 spiritual talismans were completely different than all the spiritual talismans Qin Wushuang had seen in the past. These 5 spiritual talismans were combat spiritual talismans. They could be added to weapons and increase the attack power by a few times. In the martial arts world, this type of spiritual talisman was not rare. However, the quality of these 5 spiritual talismans was not ordinary. Since they were made by Lu Xianlu and displayed here, they would not be inferior goods. One would know a thing or two just by looking at their names. These 5 spiritual talismans were named after the Divine Tao, 5 elemental talisman. In other words, these 5 talismans had secretly combined the 5 elements. Although they were not the true Divine Tao power, they were close to it. Or else, Lu Xianlu would not have boasted such a big mouth and given such a flashy name. Qin Wushuang felt a rush of excitement. In many real battles, even if he had used the graceful spiritual bow, he would still feel powerless when facing those super monstrous opponents. This was because his own cultivation base had limited him from unleashing the potential of the graceful spiritual bow to the extreme. If he could use these 5 spiritual talismans to increase the power of the graceful spiritual bow by a few times, then he would have much more confidence when facing a true expert. Thinking of this, Qin Wushuang's gaze became excited as he looked at the 5 spiritual talismans. These 5 spiritual talismans could be said to have struck the bottom of his heart. Qin Wushuang did not indulge in these spiritual talismans. Instead, he walked to the 6th item, which was also the last treasure. To be precise, this was not a treasure at all, but a secret manual. The name of this secret manual was The Great Golem Puppet. This great golem puppet was not a puppet technique similar to the secret path of divine venomous insects that Qin Wushuang had snatched from the black-clothed cultivator at the Tortoise King Mountain. The core of this technique was not to control puppets, but to refine the golem puppet doppelganger for oneself. In real battles, the puppet technique could be used to block disasters and eliminate difficulties, such as the golden silkworm shedding its shell, and so on. If this great golem puppet doppelganger was well crafted, it could definitely pass off as the real thing and make people unable to distinguish the real one. By sacrificing one golem puppet, one could easily escape with their real body. Indeed, such methods were unheard of. Qin Wushuang's heartbeat sped up as he watched. It could be said that each of these 6 treasures had moved Qin Wushuang. However, he knew that to take these 6 treasures, it meant that he must help Lu Xianlu complete his great ambition of destroying the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Of course, this was not an exchange. It was because Lu Xianlu's great ambition happened to coincide with Qin Wushuang's great ambition. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.qijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 532. Qin Wushuang walked around this secret room again. However, he did not become overly excited because of the appearance of these 6 great treasures. Now, he had another question. If Lu Xianlu had set up everything to deal with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, why would he choose this place as the location? Apparently, since this place was so close to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, it did not make sense if it was only used to store treasures. After all, everyone knew that if these things were used to deal with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, they should have set it as far away from the sect as possible. This Dark Wind Valley was a major training ground for the disciples of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Even without a map, it was possible for them to be discovered. Since Qin Wushuang could see the risks involved, it would be impossible for someone like Lu Xianlu to not see it. However, since he could see it, why would Lu Xianlu set it up like this? Qin Wushuang knew clearly that there must be a deeper reason behind it. However, Bao Bao was overjoyed as he said to Qin Wushuang with a grin, "Boss, Mr. Lu left so much wealth for you. You have made a great profit this time. With these things, you will have more confidence to deal with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, right?" Qin Wushuang laughed. Mr. Lu appears and disappears unpredictably. Now, I am thinking, why did he choose this place? Bao Bao also had a head full of questions. However, to him, these are not important. He felt that the most important thing was that these things were useful. That was enough. "Oh, boss, why do you care so much about him? Let's just take all the things and deal with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect with all our strength. It's enough to not disappoint Mr. Lu. It's meaningless to think too much." Qin Wushuang only smiled and did not speak a word as he started to observe this secret room. He firmly believed that with Lu Xianlu's personality, he would not do this without any motive. Indeed, when Qin Wushuang had walked around a dozen times, his gaze stopped behind the stone table where the great golem puppet was. A mural was carved on the wall behind this stone table. As Qin Wushuang looked at these vivid and lifelike mural, suddenly, he became thoughtful. "Bao Bao Lone, look at that mural. It's somewhat strange." Qin Wushuang felt that this mural seemed to be somewhat metaphorical. Bao Bao and Lone watched for a moment and did not have the slightest clue. Qin Wushuang stared at the mural and pondered. He felt that every procedure that Mr. Lu Xianlu had set up in this secret room was very reasonable. This mural was definitely not just for decoration. It was very likely that there was some kind of mystery hidden in this mural. After looking at it for a moment, Qin Wushuang took out the map of the Xianyuan Mount. He found the location of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture and started to look at it carefully. Next, he compared it to the map given by Lu Xianlu and said thoughtfully, "Bao Bao, look on that mural, the shape and position of this mountain. Could it be related to the heavenly Sun Mountain on the map?" On the map, the heavenly Sun Mountain was the exact location of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. This heavenly Luo Taoist sect had occupied the heavenly Sun Mountain and controlled the lifeline of all resources. It had established the supreme position of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect in the Xianyuan Mount. Qin Wushuang looked at the mural again. The content of this mural was somewhat similar to the foolish old man moves the mountain from Qin Wushuang's former world. However, In terms of the details, it was completely different from the foolish old man moves the mountain. On this mural, it indicated an extremely important route. It seemed to lead to the center of the heavenly Sun Mountain. According to the content of the map, it seemed that if one could enter this center and destroy the lifeline of the heavenly Sun Mountain, they would be able to destroy the mountain. Mr. Liu, is this guiding me to attack the heavenly Sun Mountain? Qin Wushuang mumbled to himself. He must admit that this mural was somewhat obscure as it did not contain any hints. However, according to his interpretation of this mural, it should be reflecting the heavenly Sun Mountain and conveying a message. To deal with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, one must first overturn the heavenly Sun Mountain. As long as one could destroy the lifeline of the heavenly Sun Mountain, they would be able to destroy the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. It was because the last mural depicted a palace that symbolized the heavenly Luo Taoist sect collapsing with a loud rumble. In fact, the hidden meaning was already apparent. To attack the heavenly Sun Mountain, follow this route. Qin Wushuang combined the two maps and kept following it. Gradually, his expression became less confused and brighter. He slapped his thigh and cried out, "It seems that Senior Lu Xianlu meant it this way. To attack the heavenly Sun Mountain is to seize the lifeline of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. And if this route goes deeper, it will be the vital point of the heavenly Sun Mountain. It's like hitting the weak spot of snake. Can we hit the vital point in one move?" Bao Bao laughed. "Boss, surely Mr. Lu meant it this way. Now that you have understood it, we should not hold back with these things, right?" In fact, Bao Bao cared more about these treasures left behind by Lu Xianlu. He was extremely happy to see Qin Wushuang become stronger and kill in all directions, especially when dealing with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Bao Bao was extremely passionate and addicted to it. If he could acquire the support of these equipment and treasures, it would not be as simple as bragging to relieve boredom when dealing with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. He would have the ability to put it into action. "Boss, why don't you consume that sky pilfered pill first? Let's talk about it after you have advanced to the next level," Bao Bao suggested. However, Qin Wushuang shook his head. "No rush. Now is not the time to consume this sky pilfered pill. Then when would it be appropriate?" Bao Bao felt extremely strange. "When I entered the transformation void martial stage." A trace of confidence hung on Qin Wushuang's face. Apparently, he already had a plan inwardly. Bao Bao was overjoyed. "Boss, this way. You're about to break through?" Qin Wushuang said, "During this time of comprehension and accumulation, I have accumulated a lot of foundation in the void martial stage. Although I cannot say when I will break through, in terms of the stage, I have indeed sensed a form of sublimation. During the first breakthrough in the void martial stage, I hope to use my own comprehension to achieve the first breakthrough in the void martial stage." This was Qin Wushuang's idea. If he relied on pills for the first breakthrough in the void martial stage, then he would not be able to accumulate much experience and knowledge for the later breakthroughs. Only by personally experiencing this process and gaining inspiration would he be able to gain more insights in his future breakthroughs. Thus, for the step of entering the transformation void martial stage, Qin Wushuang decided to do it alone and would not borrow any external power. He would also not rely on absorbing spiritual qi to replenish his dantian. At the void martial stage, the accumulation of spiritual qi in the dantian was secondary. The most crucial part was the sublimation of the primordial spirit. The accumulation of spiritual qi could only ensure sufficient spiritual qi. The improvement of the primordial spirit was the main melody for the breakthrough in the void martial stage. Thus, Qin Wushuang must participate and experience the pulse of this melody. Only by experiencing it himself could it be counted as a fortune. Of course, Bao Bao and Lone would not object. After Boss had entered the transformation void martial stage, the result would be completely different if he were to consume the sky pilfered pill. By that time, Qin Wushuang could enter the profound void martial stage. To Qin Wushuang, who was shouldering tremendous pressure and was about to fall into a tough battle, it would definitely be good news. Bao Bao put away those 6 goods one by one and delivered them to Qin Wushuang with a grin. Boss, this is Mr. Lu's request. You must not disappoint him. Don't you humans always say this sentence? It would be impolite to refuse. If you don't put away, wouldn't it be disrespectful to Mr. Lu? Qin Wushuang put away these 6 goods and returned to that memorial tablet. He said respectfully, Mr. Lu, I have received your great gifts. I will use all my power to destroy the heavenly Luo Taoist sect and bring Luo Tongtian's head here. It would not be easy to get Luo Tongtian's head. Luo Tongtian was a super elite warrior at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. He was only one step away from the supreme Tao stage. Of course, Qin Wushuang had no reason to fear him. That Luo Tongtian was an old guy who was a few hundred years old. And he, Qin Wushuang, was only a rising star at his early 20s. He had time in the future. Even if he could not do it now, he would have enough time to waste with Luo Tongtian in the future. At this moment, Qin Wushuang was extremely confident. He knew that with his current talent, one day he would enter the supreme Tao stage. With that 7 deadly arrays formation, it meant that he must aim for the supreme Tao stage in his future. Perhaps the supreme Tao stage would be a new starting point for him. Carrying such confidence, Qin Wushuang put away the 6 goods in full detail. The first thing he did was to put on that hard illusion mask. With this item, Qin Wushuang could change his appearance as he wished. As long as there was a face in front of him for him to imitate, he would be able to imitate it vividly. It was also because of this that this mask appeared so unique. As for the other items, each of them had a unique function. It could almost be said that they were tailor-made for Qin Wushuang, especially the supreme Tao 5 elemental talisman. When combined with the graceful spiritual bow in battle, it could instantly increase the power of the graceful spiritual bow by several times. To Qin Wushuang, this was absolutely a timely help, and the landing tracking seal could instantly increase the gravity by several times. Once he encountered someone with extremely strong aerial combat ability in an actual battle, he could suddenly use it to cause the opponent's gravity to lose its stability in a split second and find an opportunity. This was absolutely a great auxiliary killing weapon. What's more, this item could also be used as an excellent tool for tracking the earth evasion technique. It could be said that it had many functions which allowed Qin Wushuang to gain a lot. Boss, you have to study this golem puppet of yours. If you can craft a few golem puppets, for sure it will be useful in the future. Bao Bao chuckled. Besides, Lone, and I can also make a few to play with. In case we encounter an elite warrior that we cannot beat, we can leave behind a puppet and let our true body escape. That would be a life-saving asset. This golem puppet secret book recorded the method to craft the puppets. There were many methods. One could directly use a person's house as a puppet. This method was extremely cruel. One could directly capture a martial artist alive and extract his primordial spirit to kill him. Then, the house would be refined into a puppet. For such puppet, the degree of imitation was high. It would not be a problem to pass off as the real thing. The only shortcoming was that it was too cruel. The other method was to use special materials to refine the body of the puppet. However, this method had high requirements for the materials. The raw materials were not easy to obtain. Qin Wushuang flipped through this golem puppet secret book. After only a few pages, he was deeply engrossed in it. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.qijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 533. It had to be said that the golem puppet was a very attractive divine ability. Apart from the 2 methods mentioned earlier, there was also a method to refine great golem puppets. That kind of method could only be refined by Supreme Tao powerhouses. It was because it required the primordial spirit to separate the divine soul and transform the divine soul into reality to form the puppet. Among the elite warriors of the Supreme Tao, only a few of them would use this method. It was because to craft the golem puppet, one must grasp the method to craft the puppet. Only then could one use the divine soul to condense the puppet. Qin Wushuang put away this golem puppet book. After walking around the secret chamber for a few more times, Zhang Tai found that there was also a large secret chamber on the outside. There were crystal stones, armors, weapons, elixirs, and so on. Zhang Tai didn't know what to say. Qin Wushuang knew that Lu Xianlu had left these here to prepare to deal with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Naturally, with Qin Wushuang's power alone, it was impossible for him to move all the wealth here. He decided to not touch these wealth for now and let them stay here in case of emergency. According to the introduction left behind by Lu Xianlu, these wealth were enough to be on par with the wealth of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Although Qin Wushuang could not measure the wealth inside, such a large palace-like underground room was filled with such goods. It was enough to see how many good things Lu Xianlu had collected in these 100 years and how much preparation he had made to deal with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. To put it bluntly, if Lu Xianlu intended to build a sect, he could complete all the steps in half a year as long as he had enough manpower. And he would not have to worry about the lack of wealth. These treasures were enough to make a second-rate powerhouse feel ashamed of their inferiority. For now, Qin Wushuang only took one ladle to drink. The rest of the goods remained in their original place. He would come back to excavate them when he needed them. Qin Wushuang walked out of this abyss layer by layer and sealed it completely. Then, without leaving any traces, he walked out and saw the light of day again. Not long after he walked out, the saber-toothed, profound yellow dragon emerged from the ground. The appearance of such a huge creature always caused a huge commotion. "Big guy, why are you here?" Bao Bao was extremely curious. "You are neglecting your duty. Go back to your territory and guard it properly." The saber-toothed subterranean yellow dragon didn't think much of it and laughed foolishly. "Looks like you're a lucky fellow and have already obtained the secret treasure room that Mr. Lu left for his descendants. Congratulations." Qin Wushuang nodded and said to the saber-toothed subterranean yellow dragon, "Brother Dragon, how many people like you are there in Black Wind Valley?" The saber-toothed subterranean yellow dragon laughed. "Mr. Lu is quite popular here. Other than me, there are at least 3 or 4 spirit beasts working for him. We would not dare to boast about other places of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. However, for this Dark Wind Valley, even the heavenly Luo Daoist sect would not gain any benefits." However, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had a mutual understanding. They knew that they should not offend the Dark Wind Valley. Therefore, ordinary disciples would not dare to come to the Dark Wind Valley. Even if they did come, sometimes they would disappear without a cause, and the heavenly Luo Daoist sect would not dare to look into it. If you have such skills, why don't you go to war with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect on behalf of Mr. Lu? Bao asked with confusion. Go to war with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect? The saber-toothed subterranean yellow dragon did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Little monkey, you're not joking, right? Our Dark Wind Valley has 4 suzerains, and they are all super spiritual beasts at the perfect void martial stage. However, if we were to go to war with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, we will be digging our own grave. In our own territory, we have the geographical advantage and can play with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. However, if we leave the Dark Wind Valley and go to their territory to cause trouble, we will be digging our own grave. Do you know how many layers of defensive formations there are at the mountain gate of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect?" His words left Bao Bao speechless. He asked stutteringly, "Could it be that heavenly Luo Daoist sect is a dragon's pool, a tiger's den, a mountain of blades, and a sea of flames?" I think even a mountain of blades and a sea of flames would not be that terrifying." When the saber-toothed covert yellow dragon talked about the strength of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, his face was full of fear. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect had always acted tyrannically in the Divine Brilliance Prefecture and had always been imposing. The Dark Wind Valley was also the territory of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. These spiritual beasts had more or less heard about the powerful strength of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. They knew clearly that after leaving the Dark Wind Valley, they were not qualified to become enemies with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Thus, although they hated the heavenly Luo Daoist sect and were extremely loyal and admiring to Lu Xianlu, they did not have the confidence to challenge the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Although Bao Bao was not convinced, he was stopped by Qin Wushuang's gaze. Brother Dragon, Mr. Lu is already extremely grateful that you guys are helping Lu Xianlu defend this Dark Wind Valley. Leave the matter of dealing with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect to us. The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon laughed. Of course, whoever inherits Mr. Lu's secret treasure will be qualified to deal with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Qin Wushuang laughed and said again, Brother Dragon, I will still leave the Dark Wind Valley to you guys. You guys are leaving now? The saber-toothed covert yellow dragon said with surprise. We don't have much time. We must hurry. When a main force of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect returns to the heavenly Sun Mountain, our movements will not be as convenient as now. That's right. Then I will not keep you guys. Don't worry about this Dark Wind Valley. Even if Luo Tongtian were to come, we will have ways to stop him. From the tone of the saber-toothed covert yellow dragon, there was some confidence. After bidding farewell to the Dark Wind Valley, Qin Wushuang continued to move forward. Now each step he took meant he was getting closer to the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. This wave of motivation pushed Qin Wushuang forward. After being chased by the heavenly Luo Daoist sect for such a long time, Qin Wushuang finally found a chance to counterattack. The boundary of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture was at least 200,000 or 300,000 miles. After leaving the Dark Wind Valley, it would take at least a day and a night to arrive near the heavenly Sun Mountain. If Qin Wushuang were to travel at full speed, of course, it would not take this long. However, the current Divine Brilliance Prefecture was also a sensitive place. He believed that although the main force of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had left the sect, the martial law within the mountain gate would not be relaxed. For sure, there would be many elite warriors left to guard the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Therefore, Qin Wushuang would not dare to underestimate the enemy and would not be blindly optimistic. Currently, he only had one goal, and that was to strike the heavenly Luo Daoist sect ruthlessly. If there was a chance to destroy the lifeline of the heavenly Sun Mountain, it would be the best. The heavenly Sun Mountain was the base that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect relied on to survive. If the lifeline of the heavenly Sun Mountain was destroyed, it would certainly affect the fortune of the sect. Of course, it would not be an easy task to approach the heavenly Sun Mountain. Qin Wushuang would not dare to let down his guard. Through his meticulous research and inquiries, he knew that from the outer area of the heavenly Sun Mountain to the core area of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, there were at least a dozen defensive lines along the way. To pass through these lines of defense, unless one used tricks or possessed a reasonable identity, it would be impossible to approach without a cause. The defensive power of the heavenly Sun Mountain had reached a stage where even a fly would find it difficult to approach. Qin Wushuang spread out the map and started to study the surroundings of the heavenly Sun Mountain. The heavenly Sun Mountain was also a treasured land of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. On the south side of the heavenly Sun Mountain was the capital city of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. It was also the most prosperous city of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. In the capital city of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had set up many secular organizations. They would take care of the worldly affairs of the entire heavenly Luo Daoist sect and lead the entire Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Perhaps it would not be easy to enter the heavenly Sun Mountain. However, it would be much easier to enter the capital city of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Of course, it was one matter to enter. It was another matter to make his identity appear reliable and not arouse any suspicions. Therefore, Qin Wushuang was not in a rush to enter the Divine Brilliance City. Instead, he stopped at a state city that was 1,000 miles away from the divine brilliant city. He decided to walk around this place called the River Gate State City and seek an identity to enter the divine brilliant city. As long as he entered the divine brilliant city, he would be able to find a way to approach the heavenly sun mountain. To approach the heavenly sun mountain, he must acquire an identity. And the best choice would be to become a disciple of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. This point was crucial. If he could acquire the identity of a disciple of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, it would be natural for him to enter the sect. He would not have to worry about others seeing through his identity along the way. This River Gate State City was extremely close to the divine brilliant city. Since it relied on the divine brilliant city, it appeared to be bustling with activity. People from all walks of life gathered here, and it appeared to be a core city. Qin Wushuang still disguised himself as a freelance martial artist and entered the River Gate State City. Everywhere in this River Gate State City, a form of local culture was brimming. Apparently, the local people were proud of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. It was apparent that this heavenly Luo Taoist sect held great authority in the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. On the big streets and small alleys, people often talked about various strange things happening in the Xianyuan Mount. Of course, they also talked about the heavenly Luo Taoist sect's pursuit of Qin Wushuang. However, the people here did not hold back when they talked about Qin Wushuang. Their tone was full of disdain. At the same time, they also loathed Qin Wushuang. They only wished that the heavenly Luo Taoist sect could capture Qin Wushuang, peel his skin, pull out his tendons, and boil his oil to light a lamp. Of course, Qin Wushuang would not lower himself to the same level as these people. Regardless of where he went, he did not bat an eyelid after hearing their words. He did not inquire but get involved. He strolled to a nearby giant square of the River Gate State City. This was an extremely famous place in the city and a paradise for freelance martial artists in the few prefectures surrounding the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Around this giant square, there was a large street that formed a giant market for freelance martial artists. Each year, many activities would be held in this market. Some were scheduled, and some were not. This market was extremely prosperous and had a great reputation among the freelance martial artists. Thus, when Qin Wushuang and his group arrived, they clearly sensed an extremely lively atmosphere. Such liveliness also meant that this place was a place where fishes and honest folk mixed together. There were some hidden experts who wanted to take advantage of the situation and get some good stuff. And some despicable people wanted to fish in troubled waters and reap some benefits. Qin Wushuang wandered around the market. From his eyes, it seemed that he was looking at the market. In fact, he was looking for opportunities to see if he could find any. On the other hand, he was also paying attention in secret to see if anyone was scheming against him. Caution is the parent of safety. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 534. After all, he was now deep in the tiger's den. While plotting everything, he must ensure his absolute safety. If he didn't even care about his own safety, it was very likely that he would lose his life before the plan even started. This was not what Qin Wushuang wanted to see. Hey, friend, you don't look familiar. Where did you come from? I have a piece of unpolished jade here. It is said that it was mined from the illusion heavenly lake. Are you interested in seeing it? A seemingly honest rogue cultivator came over and struck up a conversation with Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang saw that he was holding a piece of emerald jade in his hand. He smiled slightly and didn't comment. He just slowly walked forward. When a man saw Qin Wushuang smile, he was even more unwilling to give up. He trotted 2 steps to catch up. I say, brother, I am very sincere. I am waiting to sell this thing, earn some crystal stones, and exchange it for a suitable weapon. I see that you have a dignified appearance, an imposing appearance, a jade tree in the wind, and a natural and unrestrained style. You should be an honest person. This person's mouth was very good. He kept on promoting his so-called unpolished jade. Qin Wushuang saw that he was unwilling to give up. He suddenly stopped and said with a smile, "Brother, if you think that I can't afford your jade, then you are wrong. In fact, I am poorer than you." His words didn't offend people. He didn't say that the other person's jade was fake. He only said that he had no money to avoid this person's endless pestering. Sure enough, when he said this, the man's face slightly changed. He looked up and down at Qin Wushuang. His eyes showed some ruthlessness. He glared at Qin Wushuang a few times and turned away. Qin Wushuang felt that this person was simply inexplicable. He didn't pay attention to him. He turned a corner and suddenly bumped into a person. This person had a mustache like a mouse. His eyes kept rolling, showing that this person was cunning. This person came over. When he passed by, he said to Qin Wushuang, "Brother, let me tell you a secret. You just refuse the people of the Bamboo Rock Gang. If you want to avoid disaster, please follow me." This person's sincere tone gave people the impression of a bodhisattva who bemoaned the heavens and pitied mankind. Qin Wushuang was not a greenhorn. Naturally, he would not fall for this trick. With a light snort, he lifted his foot and walked forward. "Friend, I sincerely want to help you. If you don't believe me, I can guarantee that you won't be able to leave this city square. Believe it or not, I can point out a way for you to survive." The guy with the handlebar mustache muttered. Qin Wushuang secretly sighed. This was really a place where the good and the bad mixed together. Such a despicable method was nothing more than wanting to take advantage of him. They bullied him because he was a foreign itinerant cultivator and looked easy to bully. If he had just taken over that person's so-called unpolished jade, the result would be nothing more than two. Either he would be forced to sell it, or the more abominable possibility was that the so-called unpolished jade might suddenly crack or something and then grab Qin Wushuang for compensation. For the first time, Qin Wushuang did not fall for the trick and did not take over the so-called unpolished jade. Then, in the second scene of this play, the guy with the handlebar mustache came on stage. One played the bad cop, the other played the good cop. To put it bluntly, it was a two-man show. They were simply a group of swindlers. Qin Wushuang had been in Jianghu for 2 lifetimes. This trick naturally could not be hidden from his discerning eyes. That guy with the handlebar mustache saw that Qin Wushuang did not listen to him. He knew that Qin Wushuang was an experienced person in Jianghu, but he saw that Qin Wushuang was young, a stranger, and had no accomplices. His heart naturally had some contempt. Qin Wushuang went to a restaurant. Although this guy with the handlebar mustache hesitated for a moment, he still boldly followed him in. Qin Wushuang entered the restaurant and walked directly to the 3rd floor. When that waiter of the restaurant saw Qin Wushuang, he came up to him. "Excuse me, are you young master he?" Qin Wushuang nodded. That waiter of the restaurant said with a face full of smiles, "Your friend is already waiting for you in the private room on the 3rd floor." Of course, the so-called young master, he was a fake name made up by Qin Wushuang. Previously, he had already exposed himself when he used the name of Wu Xinghe from his previous life to wander the Xianyuan Mount. This time, he had changed his surname to he from the 3 words Wu Xinghe. When Qin Wushuang walked to the 3rd floor, that guy with the handlebar mustache also pretended to walk around the restaurant and followed him. Qin Wushuang did not know what this guy was trying to do. He did not chase him away or scold him. Bao Bao had already waited for a while on the 3rd floor. When he saw Qin Wushuang, he immediately called out, "Young master, the honorable guests have been waiting for a long time." When he saw a stalker following behind Qin Wushuang and Qin Wushuang's bitter smile, Bao Bao raised his eyebrow. "Young master, who is this person?" Qin Wushuang laughed and said, "He is a warm-hearted living bodhisattva. He said he was going to show me a way to survive." "A way to survive?" Bao Bao laughed coldly. "You bastard, do you believe that I will slap you to death and make you unable to find a way to survive? If you know what's good for you, then get lost and do not disturb the honorable guests." When that guy with the handlebar mustache saw Bao Bao's ferocious expression, he felt somewhat scared inwardly. For the time, he did not know the details. Inwardly, he also cried out bitterly. He knew that this time he had made a mistake. Initially, there were some despicable people who only wanted to extort money. They wanted to use these deceptive methods to extort some money. Of course, there were people who bullied the weak and feared the evil. Since Bao Bao had yelled at him, that guy did not dare to talk back. His expression changed, and he walked down the stairs. When he arrived before the counter on the first floor, he asked, "Waiter, who are those people on the third floor?" That waiter had been running this restaurant for many years. How could he not know the background of this person before him? He said with an annoyed tone, "Friend, our restaurant is a place to do business. If you want to get information, go to the Freelance Martial Artist Union. We are not in charge of announcing the identity of our customers." That guy with the handlebar mustache was not angry when he was scolded by the waiter. Instead, he smiled apologetically. "Little brother, you don't have to speak so harshly, right? Everyone is just trying to make a living. I'm only asking." Before that waiter could speak, the shopkeeper on the side said coldly, "Since everyone is trying to make a living, you can't just destroy our restaurant's livelihood for your own, right? In this restaurant, you wild dog gang better not cause trouble. If you affect the customer's mood to eat and drink, then you are destroying our livelihood." Those who were able to open a restaurant in this bustling marketplace, more or less, all of them had some background. This guy with the handlebar mustache was a member of the local wild dog gang. The so-called bamboo stone gang was something he had fabricated. Initially, he had wanted to intimidate Qin Wushuang, an outsider. Hearing the words of the old shopkeeper, this person did not dare to act unreasonable. He smiled and pretended to worm his way into being friends with him. "Old shopkeeper, you are an understanding person. I saw that this person was unfamiliar and acted suspiciously. I only wanted to ask about him. Perhaps this guy is the public enemy of the divine Brilliance Prefecture, Qin Wushuang?" When that old shopkeeper heard the three words Qin Wushuang, the expression on his face changed. Then he shook his head and laughed. If any random customer is Qin Wushuang, then the people on the street could be Qin Wushuang. I say, if the Wild Dog Gang truly wants to contribute to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, then get rid of the practical matters. Relying on such deceitful methods, haha. Even if that Qin Wushuang appeared before you guys, could you catch him? That guy with the handlebar mustache touched his beard and changed his expression. Yet, he did not speak a word. He turned around and left embarrassedly. On the third floor, a figure crawled out from the floor. It was Mole. He said to Qin Wushuang, "Master, indeed, that guy did not come with good intentions." Instantly, he repeated the conversation between that guy with the handlebar mustache and the shopkeeper. In the entire private room, besides Qin Wushuang, only Bao Bao, Lone, and the other three elite warriors at the profound void martial stage had transformed into their human forms. In other words, there were 6 people in the private room. Only Jade Hair and Mole had not transformed into human forms. They would act as Qin Wushuang's eyes and ears to scout for information. This time, Qin Wushuang had entered the River Coast State City in batches to evade the eyes and ears. After hearing Mole's narration, Qin Wushuang said in a low voice, "That guy should have only said it casually." However, from this point, it's clear that this divine brilliance prefecture is not ordinary. Here, the heavenly Luo Taoist sect possesses a high reputation and prestige. Regardless of the righteous or the underworld, they all seem to feel proud to contribute to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Boss, this is the effect of the elite warriors. Regardless of how bad the heavenly Luo Taoist sect is, they never lack people to flatter them. Qin Wushuang shook his head. It's hard to say whether or not they are flattering them. For sure, the heavenly Luo Taoist sect has their own way of governing. Or else, they would not be so united. After he had finished, Qin Wushuang waved his hand. Let's not discuss this problem. By the way, Bao Bao, how's your investigation? Do you have any leads? Bao Bao laughed. Boss, I think the behind-the-scenes boss of this restaurant is a good clue. Oh, Qin Wushuang's eyes lit up. This restaurant is owned by a wealthy family in the local area. This wealthy family is also a local tyrant. If it were 20 years ago, Even if he was a local tyrant, he would not be qualified to open a restaurant in the downtown area of this market. However, 15 years ago, one of the sons of this wealthy family was chosen by the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. He became a disciple of the younger generation. The son of this wealthy family should have good talent. I heard that he was being nurtured as a core disciple. In the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, the core disciples depended on one's strength, talent, and potential. Within 10 years of entering the sect, usually a core disciple would have a high chance of reaching the Void Martial stage. If they could not enter the Void Martial stage within 10 years, they could not become a core disciple. Such competition was cruel, yet realistic. Survival of the fittest. To be nurtured as a core disciple. At least it proved that the son of this wealthy family did not have ordinary talent. Even if he was not at the same level as Luo Ting, he would be one of the more exceptional ones among the younger generation. Qin Wushuang mumbled, "No wonder that shopkeeper dared to offend the Wild Dog Gang. This restaurant has the background of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect." Bao Bao laughed. "Isn't that right? This place is only 1,000 miles away from the divine brilliant city. Most likely, each shop in this city is related to the heavenly Luo Daoist sect to some extent. If they did not have the background of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, I don't believe that these people would sing praises for them." Suddenly, Qin Wushuang said, "Bao Bao, go call that waiter up." Although Bao Bao did not know the intentions of Qin Wushuang, he did not dare to neglect as he walked downstairs. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 535. In a moment, that waiter came up. "Young Master He, are you looking for me?" That waiter appeared professional as he asked with an apologetic smile. Bao Bao said lightly, "This young master, he is a guest from that place. I heard that the owner behind your restaurant is the local landlord's wa, right?" That waiter was stunned. "That place? That's the place." Bao Bao pretended to be profound. That waiter scratched his head. "May I ask which place? How many places are there in the Xianyuan Mount?" Bao Bao opened his eyes and was somewhat impatient. That waiter said with an apologetic smile, "That's a lot. With my shallow knowledge, I can't tell you all those places. May I ask if you have any orders? I will take care of it now." "I don't have any special orders. I just want to see landlord's wa. I want to discuss some mutually beneficial matters with him." "Sirs, this kind of important matter should be discussed with Master's wa in person. We're just a small shop assistant. It's not up to me to ask about this matter." The shop assistant was smart and answered with a bitter face. "Who said you should ask?" Bao Bao rolled his eyes at him. "Don't be nervous. I only asked you to come up and ask some questions. Do you know if your landlord's wa has any special hobbies?" That waiter revealed a wave of intelligence, as he knew that he could not get involved in this matter. He only smiled apologetically. "Master, to tell you the truth, I am only a servant that runs errands. I'm not qualified to ask about the hobbies of the masters, and I don't have the time to ask. Regarding the hobbies of the masters, it's only those matters. You are all people with great identities. Each of you should know better than me." These words were the same as not saying anything. Bao Bao slapped the table. "Bastard, you have a glib tongue, not a single word of truth." Qin Wushuang smiled lightly and took out a few crystal stones. "Little brother, this little crystal stones is a small token of appreciation. You don't need to say anything deliberately. Just say whatever comes to your mind. If you can't say anything, it's all right. This is a little gift for our first meeting. Take it." These crystal stones were not yellow crystal stones, but green crystal stones. To this waiter, these few pieces of green crystal stones were definitely a huge fortune. It was also a huge sum of money that he had earned after working hard for several years. Although there was some fanaticism in his eyes, reason prevailed over greed. He swallowed his saliva. His throat was extremely dry. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. He just stared at the pieces of green crystal. He wanted to take it, but he knew that he had to pay a price for it. Qin Wushuang had gained a lot along the way. In terms of crystal stones, he was already very rich. These few pieces of green crystal were just a drop in the ocean for him. Bao Bao opened his eyes widely. I told you to take it. Just take it. With your few bones, are you afraid that we will eat you? Qin Wushuang could see through the waiter's hesitation. He knew that the waiter really wanted the green crystal, but he was also worried and afraid. These hesitations made him want to take it, but he didn't dare to. Qin Wushuang smoothly stuffed it into his palm and said with a smile, "Take it. There's no price. If you don't want to say anything, you can go down now. Let's go visit landlord's one now." That waiter looked around and grabbed the green crystal stone in his hand. He used his palm to feel the existence of this green crystal stone. His heart was thumping fast. He walked to the door and looked around a few more times. Then he walked in and lowered his voice to say, "Masters, I am also a civilian from outside the city. The shopkeeper took me in as a waiter because he saw that I am smart. Each year, I rely on this little income to support my family. Initially, I should not talk too much. However, since you do not have any ill intentions and you are not asking about my private matters, I will be bold to say a few words. However, if you want to ask about my private matters, I really don't know anything." Qin Wushuang comforted him with a smile when he saw that this waiter had finally let out a sigh of relief. "Don't worry. We only want to ask about some of landlord's interests and hobbies. We want to cater to his interests and give him some things. Hopefully, we can reach a deal. We don't care about other private matters. Everything is for the sake of making money." That waiter nodded. "If that's the case, then it would be the best. Not to hide it from you, Master's biggest hobby is to collect all kinds of rare treasures. He has many retainers. These people do not do anything else but collect all kinds of things for him. If you can bring out something that moves Master's any kind of business can be discussed." "Rare treasures. Isn't this category too big?" Bao Bao whispered. That waiter smiled apologetically. "It's not that big. Master's son is young and promising. He is a core disciple of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. In fact, Master Zhuo collected these things to increase young Master's position in the sect." These words reminded Qin Wushuang. Everything Master Zhuo had done was for his son to climb up in the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. It was not difficult to understand his desire for his son to succeed. Qin Wushuang thought about it. After a moment, he asked with a smile, "Besides this, does Masters have any other special hobbies?" That waiter laughed. "Besides this, it's nothing more than beautiful women and money. Masters is a wealthy man. It's not a special hobby to like beautiful women, right?" Like beautiful women? Indeed, it was not a special hobby. Many high-ranking officials and noble people liked it. It was enough for Qin Wushuang to have the first clue. Immediately, he waved his hand with a smile. "Thank you for your hospitality. Let's talk about this." Hearing Qin Wushuang's words, that waiter felt relieved. It was an unexpected surprise that he could earn so many crystal stones with just a few words. The things he had revealed a moment ago did not involve any privacy or secrets. Even if people knew about it, they would not be able to blame him. As for those green crystals, they were real and genuine. Thinking here, that waiter's heart became warm. With these crystal stones, he could build a big house in the countryside. His wife and children would not have to wander the streets without a home. When he saw this waiter walking down, Qin Wushuang looked at everyone with a smile. "Landlord loves rare treasures. We don't have anything good to give him." Suddenly, Bao Bao laughed. "Boss, why must we give him something? Let's not think about his son and just use the identity of Landlord Zhuo." "Oh." Qin Wushuang looked at Bao Bao with interest. Since the son of this Landlord Zhuo is a popular figure in the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, we can use the identity of Landlord Zhuo to enter the heavenly Sun Mountain. Bao Bao's suggestion was extremely bold. Yet, it made Qin Wushuang's heart beat fast. After a moment of silence, Qin Wushuang slapped his thigh. "Okay, let's start with Landlord Zhuo." After he had finished speaking, Qin Wushuang and the others no longer talked about this topic. Instead, they exchanged cups and started to enjoy the food. The banquet ended after a full 2 hours. In the afternoon, Qin Wushuang brought Bao Bao and the others to head directly to the mansion of landlord Zhua. In the Rivergate State City, this mansion could be considered a first-class mansion. Qin Wushuang knew that with landlord Zhua's current position, if they were to visit him recklessly, they would not be able to see him in person. They could boast and raise their status to a waiter. However, they could not play tricks in front of landlord Zhua. If he was truly someone with a great background, a guest from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, one plate would be enough. However, Qin Wushuang could not take out such a plate. He did have one plate. However, it was the identity plate of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. It would be asking for trouble if he took it out under such circumstances. Of course, Qin Wushuang would not be that stupid. Since landlord Zhua liked to hunt for novelties, Qin Wushuang decided to cater to his fancy. As long as he could spend some time alone with that landlord Zhua, it would be easy. What he needed was nothing more than to borrow landlord Zhua's identity. Inside the Zhua manor, landlord Zhua was enjoying the afternoon. Inside a giant house, landlord Zhua was lying lazily on a giant armchair. His upper body was naked, and only a towel was wrapped around his crucial parts. His crotch was already bulging. Next to him, 6 young girls with charming and enchanting appearances were using all methods to please this wealthy man, one of the top few in the Rivergate State City. These women all had devilish figures. They were curvaceous and had exquisite curves. Landlords will hug one girl with each hand. His bear-like palms kept kneading those concave and protruding parts. Some evil laughter emerged from the corner of his mouth. The girls that were being kneaded by him also cooperated with him and let out waves of frivolous, muffled groans. The scene appeared extremely obscene, and the other girls that were not touched by landlords Zhua's hands used other methods to serve the other vital parts of landlord Zhua. In a moment, landlord Zhua was already like an arrow on the bow and appeared majestic, and the only towel he had was torn off at some unknown time. While he was enjoying himself, a wave of light footsteps came from outside the door. Landlord Zhua had excellent hearing as he pushed away the girl before him and shouted, "Number 2, what is it?" It was landlord Zhua's trusted aide, Silver Hawk Guard number 2. That Silver Hawk Guard sent his voice, "Master, someone has sent a batch of gifts. They said that they want to see you and discuss a deal of cooperation." "What kind of gifts?" Landlord Zhua asked lightly. "Master, according to my appraisal, it should be a few pieces of adamantine, meteoric iron, and 2 pieces of extreme green jade essence. All of them are supreme quality materials." Landlord Zhua's body trembled slightly and tightly grabbed the hair of that girl that was lying on his crotch. His expression was strange. Apparently, he was enjoying this stimulating pleasure. Hearing the answer from his Silver Hawk Guard, apparently, landlord Zhua felt that these gifts were not light. His entire body trembled slightly and almost lost control. Immediately, he used his spiritual perception to lock it. Such extravagance. Who is the person that sent the gifts? I cannot see through that person. However, it seems that he should have some background. Silver Hawk Guard number 2 answered seriously. Did he say his intentions? Master, from his tone, it seems that he wants to discuss some cooperation with you in the market. Besides, this person said that he has some connections and could gather many rare treasures. Hearing these words, suddenly, landlord Zhua's entire body trembled slightly. This tremor was not important. However, that girl under his crotch had moved and her teeth had brushed against landlord Zhua's vital part. Although landlord Zhua had trained his entire body, his body could not be made of steel. Under the pain, he turned his palm into a knife and slashed at that girl's neck. With a flash of blood, that girl's head flew up. As if he had squashed an ant, landlord Zhua stood up. Suddenly, the other 5 girls cried out in terror when they saw the blood. Landlord Zhua did not even look and swung his hand knife. With a flash of light, the girl's head had also been cut into 10 pieces. This landlord Zhua had such a hobby of torturing and killing. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 536. When Landlord's had finished, he said lightly, "Clean up and let that guy wait for me at the guest lounge." It was apparent that although this Landlord's was not the strongest figure in this Rivergate State City, he was definitely a powerful figure. Qin Wushuang waited for a while in the living room and did not see this Landlord's appear. He knew that this Landlord's was not a kind person. He was playing tricks with him by not showing himself. Of course, Qin Wushuang was not in a rush. Those dark meteoric iron and the extreme green jade essence were only bait he had thrown out to let Landlord's taste the sweetness. As long as this big fish Landlord's took the bait, sooner or later he would spit out those things with interest. After about half an hour, that Landlord's walked over with his subordinates at a neither fast nor slow pace. Although Landlord's did not have a high strength and was only at the transformation Void Martial stage, he had two profound Void Martial stage warriors next to him. These two profound Void Martial stage warriors were the two highest leaders of the Silverhawk Guard. In the Rivergate State City, there were only a few people that could threaten Landlord's. However, due to the relationship between Landlord's and the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect, plus Landlord's excelled at using this relationship to its fullest potential, those who were stronger than Landlord's in the Rivergate State City had to act according to his wishes. Landlord's sized this guest up and narrowed his eyes into a line. He asked lightly, "Friend, forgive my poor eyesight. Where do you come from?" Qin Wushuang had dared to come here because he had calculated all possibilities countless times, including what questions Landlord's would ask and what actions he would take. Of course, he was not surprised when he heard Landlord's question. "In the Rivergate State City, who doesn't know your name, Landlord's? I have come from afar to do business with you, Landlord. Landlord's only revealed a cold smile with a taut face. "Business?" Landlord's spread out his hands and said with a proud tone, "In the Rivergate State City, those who know my name should know my temperament. I am not afraid of too much business, nor too much business. Of course, I welcome business. However, there's one type of business that I do not do." "Oh, I would like to hear the details," Qin Wushuang said with a humble tone. "I don't do business with unknown origins." Landlord's did not conceal his intentions. In terms of business, he had indeed displayed the essence of a businessman. "This is easy. Landlord's only wants an identity, right?" Qin Wushuang said calmly. "Identity is extremely important to you." Landlord's waved his palms that were as large as palm leaf fans. "Of course, I have achieved my current status by relying on such caution. There are some businesses that seem to be very tempting, but they could drag my entire family into the abyss at any time. Naturally, it's best not to touch them." When Landlord's said this, he also laughed and said with an honest tone, "Friend, I am not lying when I say this, right?" Obviously, this person had hidden a trace of shrewdness and the cunning of a businessman. However, he was able to use such a seemingly sincere and honest tone to speak about a matter that made it impossible for one to develop a sense of disgust. Qin Wushuang laughed and did not speak anymore. He gave a long sigh and said as if he was talking to himself, "It seems that for this business, I am afraid Landlord's was not the person I am looking for." Landlord's was able to keep his composure. Although from Qin Wushuang's tone, it seemed that this business was rather big. Landlord's knew better than anyone that although there were things like meat pies falling from the sky, it was not something one would encounter easily. For such business that came to him, he must be especially vigilant. Perhaps it was a scam. Besides, the other party had given him an important gift right off the bat. It made Landlord's feel that one who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. "Friend, what is your surname?" Landlord's asked suddenly. "My surname is He." Qin Wushuang responded with the prepared lines. Before Landlord's could speak, Qin Wushuang laughed. Landlord's son is already a core disciple in the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. You also have a large family business in the Rivergate State City. It's reasonable for you to be cautious. Ha ha. This way, I will not disturb your peaceful cultivation. After he had finished speaking, Qin Wushuang pretended to get up and leave. Landlords will remain calm and collected as he watched Qin Wushuang stand up. After a moment, he also stood up and laughed. Then I will see you off. This time, Qin Wushuang only came with Bao Bao. Lone stayed at the place where they had settled down. Those sealed spiritual beasts were also inside the sealed scrolls. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang scolded Landlord Zhua for being a cunning old fox. However, he did not expect Landlord Zhua to take the bait as he cupped his hands in a salute. Landlord Zhua, please stay. Landlord Zhua laughed. Even if we do business, we do not break up friendship. It's reasonable for me to see you off. Please. While they spoke, they had already walked to the long corridor outside the hall. Qin Wushuang walked out at a neither fast nor slow pace. After a few steps, suddenly, he asked thoughtfully, Landlord Zhua, among the core disciples of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, most of them are disciples of the Luo clan, and a portion of them are disciples of the Tian clan. The Zhua clan should only be the third major clan, right? Landlord Zhua laughed. Brother, he is rather familiar with our heavenly Luo Taoist sect. With the great reputation of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, it will be difficult for me to not know about it. Qin Wushuang said here, at the border of the River Gate State, there is the Goose Lake State. The Goose Lake State is the place with the densely populated Tian clan, right? I remember that many of the core disciples of the Tian clan came from the Goose Lake State. Yes, indeed, brother, he knows everything. Inwardly, Landlord Zhua whispered, what was this guy with the surname he trying to do? Okay, Landlord Zhua, please stay. When they were about to reach the door, Qin Wushuang turned around with a smile. Where are you staying? Landlord Zhua pretended to ask with concern. Qin Wushuang frowned slightly. Initially, I planned to find a random inn. However, I must make an urgent trip to the Goose Lake State. When he said here, it was unknown if Qin Wushuang had done it deliberately or for some other reason. But he said to Landlord Zhua, today I came without warning. As he said, we can break up business, but not friendship. For today's matter, please forget about it. I would be extremely grateful. When Landlord Zhua saw Qin Wushuang speaking mysteriously, he could not help but feel somewhat itchy. Yet he didn't know that Qin Wushuang had deliberately left such a bait to tickle him. He wanted to make his heart itch so much that it was difficult to scratch it. Only then would the matter turn around. As he watched the two of them leave the entrance of the manor and almost turn the corner of the street, Landlord Zhua instructed his servants. Number 1, go follow them and see where they are staying. After Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao had left, Bao Bao also did not feel confident as he sent his voice. Boss, are we leaving like this? Don't rush, Bao Bao. If Landlord Zhua does not take the bait, we will make plans. If he is tempted, of course he will take the bait. Eat some, come early, and he will come. Before they had returned to the inn, Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao both felt that someone was following them from behind. Although the leader of the Silver Hawk Guard No. 1 was an elite warrior at the profound void martial stage, his spiritual perception was not as high as Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao, who possessed the bloodline of the Supreme Tao. Therefore, although his tracking skills were good, in the end he could not make it watertight. They are already here. After Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao communicated with their spiritual perception, they both understood tacitly and started to carry out the plan according to Qin Wushuang's plan. Through the communication jade plate, they told Lone that they would pretend to leave the city temporarily. They asked Lone to bide his time here. Indeed, after Qin Wushuang and his friends had arrived at the inn, they pretended to be in a hurry and rushed out of the River Gate State City. Silver Hawk Guard No. 1 passed everything he had seen and heard to Landlord Zhua. Landlord Zhua kept tapping his finger on the table and mumbled to himself. These two guys, are they really going to the Goose Lake town? What kind of business are they going to do? With such extravagance, if they're truly going to do business, it should be a big one. From that guy's tone, it seems that only the family of the core disciples of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect can do this business. Could it be that this guy wants to use the backing of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect to do some shady business? Of course, Landlord Zhua would not dare to make decisions for the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. However, it was not impossible to use the prestige of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. In fact, Landlord Zhua had always done this. Those two guys came to find me first, then went to the Goose Lake town. This way, it seems that I am their first choice. Those Tian clan at the Goose Lake State should only be a backup choice. Landlord Zhua only felt an unbearable itch in his heart as he instructed. Number 1, go and stop those two. Just say that I want to see them again. Should I ask them to return to the residence? No need. It's the same to see them outside. Although those two guys have a mysterious background, their strength should not be enough to threaten us. Landlord Zhua appeared to be extremely confident. Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao left the city and rushed towards the direction of the Goose Lake State. Although they appeared to be in a hurry, they secretly restrained their speed and only controlled it at the normal speed of the transformation Void Marshal stage. After about 1,000 miles, Silver Hawkar No. 1 caught up with them as ordered. Friend He, please stay. Qin Wushuang pretended to show an expression of fear and pulled out the Violet Sun Sword. He stared behind him with an alert expression. Silver Hawkar No. 1 flashed out from behind. My landlord asks you two to stay. He still wants to talk with you too. Qin Wushuang said in a low voice. What else is there to talk about? Silver Hawkar No. 1 said with a light smile. I don't know about the details. I'm only following orders. Qin Wushuang exchanged a glance with Bao Bao as they worked hard to control the joy inside their heart. Bao Bao said angrily, You landlords are being careful, but we don't have time to waste. Sorry, we will take our leave. After they had finished, they ignored the surprised look from Silver Hawkar No. 1 and flew forward. The Silver Hawkar thought that these two would wait, or at least stop. Unexpectedly, these two left immediately. Immediately, he sent his spiritual perception to Landlord Zhua. These two are not willing to wait. They already left. Catch them. Inwardly, Landlord Zhua was even more anxious. The more abnormal the other party acted, the more he felt that there was something fishy going on. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.